you guys all set? Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the January 22nd Watertown Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. My name's Melissa Santucci-Rossi. I'm the chair of the zoning board. We have a pretty big agenda tonight. There's going to be a lot of things that aren't going forward. I'll announce those cases in a minute. What I'd like to do first is announce who's here with us. All the way down on the right, we have our senior planner, Gideon Schreiber, zoning enforcement officer, Mike Mena. Members that are here of the board this evening that will be participating in all the cases is full member Donato. To my immediate right, full member and clerk to the board, Mr. Ferris. To my left, member Heap. And to member Heap's left, Francis Floor, who is our alternate, who will be participating and voting on all the cases this evening. So all cases will have 5 members eligible to both participate and vote. I forgot to take that off. Okay, so as far as the agenda goes, 99 and 101 Lexington Street will not be heard. That'll be continued to February. 19 Coolidge Hill Road, the self-storage proposal will not be heard. That was continued at the planning board. 85 and 101 Walnut Street, which was continued from last month, will also not be heard tonight due to a lack of a voting quorum. And application 18-20 Clyde Road will be continued to February. So the cases that will be heard in this order this evening is 18 to 20 Porter Street will be first, 23 Elm Street will be second, and then we will take up a request for withdrawal of a comprehensive permit at 19 Coolidge Hill Road before we adjourn this evening. So with that, anybody who's going to speak tonight, if you can stand up, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I swear the testimony I give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. This evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you very much. All right. If you want to read the
Sure.
legal notice for 1820 Porter Street, and then the applicant can make their presentation from the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Olga Bond, Ramal Partners LLC, 381 Elliott Street, Newton, Mass. 02464. Herein request the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a special permit finding in accordance with Watertown Zoning Ordinance Section 4.06A, alterations to nonconforming driveway to extend existing nonconforming driveway to add parking. This is located in the T2 Family Zoning District.
Thank you.
Hello, good
Hi.
evening, everybody. So we had our first hearing a couple of weeks ago, and
Can you just tell us who you are?
Oh, yes, my name is Olga Ban. I'm with Mall Partners. We have applied for prolonging the driveway and adding parking in the back of the property at 1820 Porter Street. So we had our first meeting a couple of weeks back, and we have received some recommendations on adjusting and fixing the configuration of the parking lot. So that's something we followed, and I have provided new plans for the board.
What's the date of the revised plan?
I've sent the plan January 15th.
They're stamped in January 16th.
Okay, yeah.
So it's
It
the
looks
one-
like the revision block is old, but, okay, I just want to make sure we're looking at the right plan. Go ahead, ma'am.
So yeah, the difference was in adjusting the size of the parking spaces and stacking them. So that way, there's a little bit more green space in the back and showing the green space all around. So we just follow exactly the recommendation we received from the board and completed it on the plans.
So there's some dimensions missing here on the plan, but from looking at the plan, either to the applicant or staff, I'm guessing this existing driveway that's going to be extended is closer than 4 feet?
Yes, it is.
And what is that actual dimension?
I'm trying to look at the plan too.
Madam Chair and
Yes.
Board, when staff received the plans, we put a scale on the plan, and it's approximately 2 feet at the front, and the applicant's plan shows it veering to approximately 1-foot buffer at its terminus. I believe, you have that condition in there, right? We did have a condition of approval that the driveway shall maintain the existing non-conforming buffer at its terminus and not further encroach in non-conforming setback. So although the plan is showing a 2-foot to 1-foot buffer at the rear, the staff recommended condition is that it maintain the 2 throughout.
Okay. And what's the pavement width of the driveway going back?
So we're planning to do the asphalt. However, we're open to do pavers too, so the impervious area is more than, so we're not paving entire plot plan.
I'm asking the width of the driveway.
The
You said
width-
the proposed driveway going all the way back?
Well, so there's a 9.5, I would assume -2, it's a 7.5 feet.
Do you have anything else to present? Okay, I just want to ask a few
Yeah,
questions
sure, go
before
ahead.
we open it up. So you come down this narrow driveway, and then you pull into these parking spaces. Have you run any turning templates to make sure that you can actually get in and out of these spots?
So the owners, the new owners of the units in the property will have to back up. There's no turning.
That's what I'm asking
Yes,
you.
they
Is there
will-
even enough room, so the cars come down the driveway?
Yeah, they can come down and they will have to back up. They cannot turn around on the parking spaces.
So they're gonna park head in? Is that how this
Right,
is designed?
Right.
And then they're gonna have to reverse all the way
Reverse
back
all the way
down that
back, yeah,
driveway?
Yeah. The issue is that, unfortunately, there's no parking spaces on the street in front of the house, and that's the only option we see for these 2 units to have a parking.
I'm just wondering if this parking is actually, I mean, it looks good on paper, but you have a 17-foot space, which is already shallow. And then behind that, like, if you're in parking space 3 or 4, you essentially only have 7.5 feet to maneuver the car, which is very, very, very shallow. So when you're backing out of a parking
Maybe challenging
space,
for the larger cars.
excuse me?
Maybe challenging for the larger car.
Challenging for any car. I mean, that's not even, 7.5 feet is, I don't know. Those are my questions. If we're gonna put spaces in, they should actually work. And these look challenging at best. Okay, I'll open it up to the other board members. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair, I do. One thing that I was thinking about was perhaps trying to kind of just stagger diagonals, try to have like diagonal spaces for behind the house.
Right, we tried that configuration, but it's not workable. We have to keep that 10 feet of the rear and 4 feet of the right side of the lot. We've tried different options, and this is the most favorable so far.
I was just thinking, Madam Chair, when you were saying you've got 7 feet to maneuver, was that also considering that we're requiring them to continue with the 2-foot buffer on the?
No, I didn't even take that into
That-
consideration, Member Donato. I'm just trying to figure out how much room, even if you drew a line behind the parking spaces and looked at the depth of the space and then how much they actually have to back up into, and I guess swing around the other car and back all the way up. I just,
So
I don't.
the driveway that's existing right now, and it is a shallow one, it's like a 7.5 feet. For instance, while we're having a construction right now, we're having a dumpster on it placed, and dumpsters are huge, so they fit comfortably. personally, if you have ever been to that property, it seems shallow on the paper, but the cars and trucks can, easily go down the driveway.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not,
that's-
going down is
No.
one thing. When you have to turn a car a 90-degree angle and then somehow turn it back, either the other direction or back all the way up, it's, it's just really, really, really tight.
So we've tried, the first configuration we've tried was to keep 10 foot of the rear line and have them kind of, so now they almost like going down. So I keep them straight. But that way, we're not fitting into 4-foot buffer on the other side to keep the,
What about just having the driveway that goes straight down? That way the cars don't have to maneuver like that and they can just pull in and back out straight.
what do you mean straight down?
Like, why are you extending it behind the back? Why aren't you having the cars just parked in the actual driveway?
So this is a two-family. We are renovating, it's a full gut renovation. We're converting it into 2 separate units.
Welcome to Watertown.
Well, I guess so.
I've heard that, I don't know, 200 times in the past 20 years.
So having 2 units.
If you bought
having-
this, and I don't know if you knew or you didn't know the requirements, but I'm just questioning the ability to even get in and out of those spaces. Did you have any questions or comments, Member Ferris?
I do, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and I'm sorry,
Are you all set?
did you
Yeah.
finish, Member
Yeah.
Donato?
I did, thank
Okay.
you.
So there, I also have a concern about just the workability of spaces, number 1 and number 3. I don't really see how, when spaces 2 and 4 are occupied, how 1 and 3 are actually going
Oh,
to
they
back
can't get
out. Not even so much 1, obviously, with 3 needs to be gone, but, so you can, if you place a car in parking spot number 4, and then you think, how do you get number 3 out? It would be a challenge.
can't.
I think, I'm not I don't design parking, but I think generally, the width of that space, what we have is 7.5 feet when you're turning into a space, and parking lots is typically 18 to 20 feet wide in terms of
Right.
being able to kind of turn and curve. So I'm not quite sure how somebody would get out of 3 and 1 when somebody's using 2 and 4. The other thing is, I did notice that there's a retaining wall being built around most of the property, which will actually bite into the buffer. It's on page 2 of the package that we've got. So I noticed on the left, that retaining wall, it's being parged for the neighbor. On the rear side, against the rear neighbors, I didn't see any parging, but what's the anticipation? Is that retaining wall going to basically be flush with grade, or how high above grade would it be? And I guess I'm wondering what's going to prevent somebody in parking space number 1, 2, 3, or 4 from
Driving.
backing off of it, in a sense, because
So
of the
the
tight
wall,
situation.
that retaining wall will be over the grade. It's not going to be flashing. So what we have right now prepared on the lot, the way it's leveled, that's the way it's going to stay.
So it basically would act as a curb, so
Right.
when these people are trying to get out, they're going to back
There's
up
a curb,
until
yes.
their wheels hit the curb, which means their vehicle's actually going to be overhanging the neighbor's property.
Put a fence over the retaining wall.
Well, you don't speak from the audience, sir. If you want
Uh,
to say something, you can come up.
Wilson is one of the builders that working on the property.
So you'd have a fence, and so that's going to clearly make it more challenging. I guess one question for staff is, if it were to be tandem spaces on the left, not really going into the rear yard, where at the tightest spot, it's 9.6 feet. On the right-hand side, or the east side of the whatever that would be, west of the building, it's 9.9. Is there any feasibility without having the setbacks to the neighboring properties of having 2 tandem spaces to the left side of the house and 2 tandem spaces to the right side of the house, and backing out into the street?
Yes, Madam Chair and Board, that would require a variance. And couple of the first proposals the applicant came in with was having more parking area that maybe would have allowed more flexibility and maneuverability, but wouldn't have met the 10-foot setback and wouldn't have met the 4-foot setback on the right and would have triggered a variance. And staff has indicated that we wouldn't be able to make the findings at a staff level to support a variance. And this is the reason why the applicant revised the plan to provide the 10-foot setback and the 4-foot on the right. And just to, kind of go back to the parking spaces, it is always my concern when an applicant shows actual parking spaces on a plan, rather than just requesting an extension of a driveway, is that, we're looking at these parking spaces and we're approving these spaces in this configuration, which, I think, as you recommended, why can't folks just park tandem in the driveway? And I think in reality, if this was approved, you wouldn't have 4 cars parking back there. You'd have maybe 2 and 2 in the driveway. So, rather than possibly looking at this as approving parking spaces, looking at this as a proposal to extend a non-conforming driveway, and, where they park, we can't regulate from an enforcement standpoint. We're saying this is where the parking is, but in reality, there's no ability to enforce that they
Right, how
park
they-
in those locations. So in my mind, it's a driveway.
So what's the feasibility of doing 2 tandem spaces to the left of the house and 2 tandem spaces to the right of the house? I mean, already this plan that we're looking at is requesting relief from having to do a 4-foot buffer on the left, yet they're doing all this pavement on the property for a configuration that doesn't seem practical.
So,
Even if there were 2 spaces parked tandem on the left, and then 2 more cars in the back, you got 4 cars parked tandem, which to me doesn't seem practical for 2 households.
I mean, that's what you see all over Watertown. So, I understand we've had proposals come in before that I believe we've possibly even approved with 4 tandem, which the code allows 4 tandem in a driveway. But, Watertown has smaller lots,
Yeah.
it's very dense, and obviously with the parking ban, parking is very important. So, people try and squeeze parking in
Sure.
where they can. And it's not always the best configuration, and units need to work with each other in some cases to back in and out of spaces.
Okay, thank you. I think for right now, Madam Chair, I think that's it. It just is a kind of a
Yeah, a lot
confusing
of
scenario. Yeah.
Member Heap?
Thank you. Is there any new landscaping or fencing that you're proposing between the driveway and the property line?
So we're putting a new fencing in the back and also along the retaining wall, and as well as on the right side. So the property lines will be fenced in,
The whole
the whole
property line?
right, back, and left. And all you see the green space proposed, that's what the green space will be. The new landscaping will be done in spring around the house.
What are we talking about for landscaping? All I see on the plan, that's not depicted on the plan. All I see on the plan is, unless I'm missing it. So what are you proposing for landscaping?
So usually when we work, and this is not a first project in Watertown we're doing some bushes and flowers in front of the house, just dressing up the property along the walkways in the back. Nothing major. There's trees all over around, properties everywhere, so adding trees, I don't think that would be a good idea, but some shrubs and bushes to dress up the property. That's usually what we do.
Okay, but specifically, there's going to be a fence that runs from the street all the way to the back property line?
Right.
Along the whole
Separating,
length of the
yeah,
driveway?
separating the properties. Neighbor property and this property.
Is there a fence there now, or is that going to be new?
I think there's an old fence right now. There's an old chain link fence right now.
On the left side or the right side?
Nothing on the left right now. There is only a fence on the right and in the back.
But on the left, where you're asking for relief for the extended driveway. You're proposing a fence that will run the whole length of that property
Right,
line?
right.
Yes, you can.
On the side, on the left side, it's not gonna have a fence. The fence is gonna go, start small by when you see the decking, existing like a two-story porch. That's where it starts the small to the left. It's not gonna be all the way to the left, over there. But on the right side, it's gonna be fenced all the way with the chain fence, and on the back as well. That's gonna be the complete fence. On the left side, it's not.
So on the left side, what
We're gonna have
you
a
said,
half.
you're gonna start it to line up with the porch and go all the way back?
The rear porch or the front porch?
The back.
Back porch.
The back porch.
Oh, the back porch.
Just
Back
wanted to
porch.
clarify that.
The back porch. Because we're gonna have the driveway, and on the back is gonna make like a nice view with the neighbors that we have as well. So more to the right. So it's just about the neighbors.
I mean, I'm having a difficult, so you have no grades on your plan. You have this perimeter shown, and I don't mean to interrupt Member Heap, but I'm just trying to figure this out at the same time.
Please.
So along the rear of the driveway, you have the double line. Is that the retaining wall?
No.
No.
It's not shown on there.
No, it's just gonna have a buffer.
It's just a buffer. I think last time we spoke about it.
So you have a double line shown
Yes.
running along the back of the, what is it?
I think the land surveyor, the way he, put it, just,
We spoke last time, and because they are concerned when somebody gonna back it up, they're gonna back it up to that like onto the grass, and then go back. That's why we put a little bit higher, so somebody try to avoid somebody back it up on the
What's
grass.
higher, the grass or the driveway?
having a bumper like
It's just a little bump.
I don't know what a little bump is.
It's
A
It's a
curb?
paver. It's a curb. It's a
Okay,
little
a
curb.
curb.
Madam
Okay.
Chairman?
That was based on staff suggested that.
So they don't keep driving over the,
Drive into
okay.
the 10-foot buffer, that the
And
zoning
then
board would ask for that. so.
where is, then you have something shown, that same thing shown at the head of the two spaces. Okay, so you have, that's a curb? Okay, so why are you measuring your 4-foot buffer to the inside of the curb? So that, and to staff too, they have 4-foot dimensions here that are to the inside of that curbing. So that means that curbing is inside the 4-foot buffer, which it's not allowed to be. Is that correct?
I don't know if I would say it's not allowed. The ordinance says no parking and driveway within the 4-foot buffer. A curbing there, at a staff level, I don't have issue with it.
We've allowed retaining walls within the buffer, and so the question is whether the 6-inch required separation to keep a vehicle from going into the buffer would be outside of the buffer, or inside of the buffer. So it seems consistent that it could be within the buffer as long as the actual paved driveway is not, based on those other determinations. But
So where are these walls in the picture? I mean, to me, this looks like you're creating like a level in the whole yard by this picture.
The yard is level.
so be,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I was there on whatever day, Sunday?
See exactly the picture, so.
Yeah, so they're building a retaining wall for what appears, I can't quite remember at the very front, but on the whole left-hand side, they're building a retaining wall, which is not illustrated on this plan.
Right.
But is shown in this photograph.
Right, okay.
And then along the whole rear, there is also a retaining wall. I didn't take note of what's going on in the back right corner. The reason for the double line is because the neighbors, the abutting neighbors have existing fences.
Yeah, I was asking about this line.
Oh, I'm sorry, that line, yeah. So
That
there's a.
looks like something specked out, like it
Yeah,
doesn't, you know.
yeah. So there's a retaining wall along what I assume are the property lines, which will look like right now they're roughly 6 inches to 8 inches above rough grade. That's why I was asking, are they actually going to be flush with grade or not?
So what's the point of the wall if it's all level?
It's not, the wall over there is not like, was done. The back is not like, was remove a lot of dirt from the basement, because the basement now is 10 feet. So it's a lot of dirt over there. So the backyard is still not 100% done over there. We just put the
Did
grade.
you raise it up and level it? Is that why you put the
All
wall in?
Yes, because now was a little bit, was low before. We just put on the line because when you're gonna do the fence, it's easy to build the fence.
Well, just to be clear,
You
wasn't the rear
don't,
yard?
people don't
2 feet?
install retaining walls around the entire perimeter of the property, just to install it. I mean,
That's not exactly like, the way that it was built was just on the right side of here and on the back. It's just like, when you have over there, we have something over there, and we just put a little bit grade over there. And we built it, that's all.
so you took material out of the basement and leveled the yard and put a wall in?
A little bit was.
Okay.
I'm going to speculate, I'm going to say it's between, whatever, 18 to 24 inches taller than the neighbor's property, you know, when you're on grade here, roughly.
Okay. Do you have more comments? Yeah, do you have anything?
No, I agree with everything everybody else said. I think that we need a plan that actually depicts what you're intending to build, just to make sure that we all understand where the fencing goes, where it doesn't, where the raised curb goes, where it doesn't. And I think we need some curvature for cars, because I don't know if you were car number 3 or 1, how you would leave if there's somebody parked in number 4. And I'm looking, and there's the house next door has some stairs coming out right around there too, so it just seems like a bit of a hazard if you do build it that way. And also, are there trees right now in that area? It looks like it's a very
On the lot, there's no.
luscious area. On the other side?
On the back.
On the back
On the
side?
back, it is a lot of trees.
So that would be raised for the parking? Would you have to get rid of the trees for the
Our lot
parking?
does not have any trees here.
Our lot
Doesn't have
any
trees.
trees.
Oh, okay, okay. You
Just
can't
the
see too
neighbors.
much from the
Yeah, it's
inside?
just on the neighbors.
Okay, but those would be my comments in addition to what everybody else said.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments from the board members? No, okay.
I do,
Yeah,
sorry.
please, yep.
Again, I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
no,
figure
that's
out
fine.
what would,
Just wanted to see if the audience had anything to say.
I'm just wondering, like, what might make this work?
Work?
Yeah, and so I have to just ask another question of staff then.
5,000 square feet of land.
Would the applicant be allowed to have a wider curb cut at the front and so parking one car to the right of what's called existing driveway means that would be front yard parking, so that's not allowed, right?
We have taken the tact before of where the angle is of the house, where you see the existing two-story porch, and where that terminates to the left and the house angles back. We have, in previous cases, permitted a driveway to extend what would be to the end of that porch and further down, and not call that angle as it's starting to turn to the side of the house, and
Yeah.
be flexible with folks and allow a driveway to extend to that. But it could definitely not extend any further than that, and that's been our past
I see.
past
Okay.
practice.
So the angle of the bay, basically, yeah.
That wouldn't be wide enough to
Yeah,
create 2
right.
spaces wide. I spent a little bit of time on because their original configuration had, they were, the parking
Angled.
spaces were the same shape as the lot, which just, the reality was that they weren't even 16 feet in depth, so I knew that it would be an issue. I guess that, from what I'm hearing from the board, it physically is not going to work to have 4 spaces, and that's why I wanted them to convey what rectangular spaces look like in the backyard, instead of having because you don't want to have an expectation that there's going to be 4 parking spaces in a backyard for a development if you can't fit 4 cars back there. So, seeing this layout, obviously the spaces fit, but it is exactly up to the drive aisle, and the drive aisle is only, 7.5 feet. And so the question is, there's ways to have them separate, and you end up with a little bit of space in the middle of them, or you can have the spaces be much wider. So, I sketched out a plan for them really quickly, and the radius is you can have a sharp radius or much less of more of an angle or less of an angle, and there's some of those pieces which would remove more of the rear yard in the area that's allowed to be removed for pavement or pavers or whatever, but without guidance, I don't see how you're gonna lay out something that fits 4 parking spaces that actually
Work.
physically can work to make that turn with that, like, either parking spot number 4, or as you said, parking spot 1 and 3 are not usable.
Yeah.
And the original configuration where there was 3 wide, the spaces were only 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
You can't turn around a corner and get into an 8-foot spot.
I mean, there'd be more flexibility in a sense if parking space number 4 and number 2 were separated, let's say, from 1 and 3, or closer to the house to give more leverage room, but still, I don't know how they would do it. And I guess I'll be persistent and ask, 2 cars parking tandem on the left and 2 parking tandem on the right would not be compliant?
That is a variance. You cannot put,
And they're looking for a variance now, right?
no,
There's a
no,
fine.
they're asking for
Oh,
a special permit
okay.
finding. There wouldn't be a reason from staff's perspective for this to merit a variance
Okay.
request. They have an existing driveway and they have existing parking, and the special permit finding is a much
Okay.
lower ask.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Ferris. All right, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open it up. Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions or comments? Please, Mr. Duff. And then I'll recognize you folks after. Thank you.
Go ahead. Sure.
Dennis J. Duff, 33 Spruce Street. This is quite a mess. This is a street I'm very, very familiar with. In 1929, Anthony Tony Puzo bought this house for his 6 kids. One of became Frances Duff, my mother. So since I can remember, I've been playing and going over to Porter Street. Sadly, it's a street that's kind of been forgotten. Do you realize there's not one street tree on Porter Street? As to some of the claims, a lot of trees in the backyard, that's not exactly true, and I can understand the misinterpretation. There's large shrubs that back up to this property, and I know because I planted them. This issue of parking, they bought this property, they should know the zoning rules, they knew the driveway. It's been a driveway there for years. There are many, not maybe many, but there are enough properties in Watertown, like on Aldridge Road, where 2-bedroom units have 1 parking space. This paving of the backyard and the length goes against a lot of what the town council wanted when they put in the buffer. They wanted more green, open space and less paving. Therefore, I would respectfully request that you grant them the 2 spaces on the side that would be grandfathered that have always been there. And that's the way they'd have to sell it. And it's maybe not ideal and it's not optimum, and they're not going to max out a condo sale because they only have 1 space per unit. But that's the situation of the property. And the rest of the neighbors shouldn't have to suffer with asphalt everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. Do you want to come up, sir? Thank you. No, you were here and saw what was going on. You're good.
I will not. So my name is Paul Gorham. I live at 142 Spruce Street. My backyard is not directly adjacent to it, but I am part of that islet of backyard there. And the back deck.
Which one, sir? I just want to orientate here on the.
Oh, that's it. I'm sorry. I was at 142 Spruce Street previously. I'm now at 246 Boylston and moved in over the summer. Sorry.
So you're behind this?
Yes. So looking at the plans here.
Yeah, there's a couple. Oh, here you are, Dorfman.
No, not quite. So
Oh.
my house is here.
Okay.
So we've got a view through
Okay.
this, through the yards here, overlooking this area
Okay.
here. And I'm on the 2nd and 3rd floor.
Okay. You're this guy.
All right, so, having lived over previously on Spruce Street, my next door neighbors had a paved backyard. They had 4 spaces that was constantly 6 cars. And the difference of that yard is that they had room to turn around. And from what the description of I have heard, is that if these cars are going to have to back out all the time to reach the street, I'm concerned about all the children in the neighborhood, and there are quite a few, where they might not be aware that the cars are coming backwards from the parking spaces. Also, my experience of having neighbors with a parking situation like that, they park tandem when there's parking restrictions. And when there's not parking restrictions, there's 2 cars in the driveway and 2 more cars in the street, which is contrary to what they've put into asking for their variance to get cars off of the street for street cleaning and for service. My other concern is about the asphalt. On the plans, it says that it has paved areas for the cars to park, and the rest, I'm understanding, is going to be green space? Like, is that
You
what
can
I'm
look at this if you'd like to, sir.
I didn't saw it. Well, that's great when you first move in. However, the practical solution to a spot where you can't turn around in is to pave it over and drive over that area there. So, a backyard that used to be very lush and green and have several very old trees has now been reduced to a flat, muddy area with a retaining wall that I think a fence is going to sit on, but I don't know how you're going to turn a car around in it. And I'm concerned is that the next person who comes in and buys a house to rehab it, get it ready for sale, will look at this house and say, oh, let's turn this backyard into a parking space as well. And then the next piece of the pie becomes a parking spot, and the next piece of pie becomes a parking spot. And this cool, nice green oasis that we have in the spring and summertime will just be an asphalt parking lot. And that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience? Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, sorry. Hi, Hannah Rakoff, 87 Spruce Street. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm kind of squeaky. I am not familiar with the details on this, I have to admit, but I wanted to echo the 2 gentlemen we've just heard and point out that we've had a similar situation with our neighbors. It turned over from a lone fellow with 1 car to people who are essentially professional drivers and are parking, trying to fit tandem where there isn't quite space. And over the last year or so, we've seen the stones dividing gradually get pushed a little further to our side, gradually get moved. As they back out, they do the best they can, but they're essentially killing the sort of little bit of curb between the 2 curb cuts is getting, where there should be a berm is getting crushed.
As they're backing out?
Yeah, and they're going wider and wider. I've never said anything because it's always just okay, but I think, if it were at the point where I could put in a word to the board to maybe prevent a similar situation, I would want to take that opportunity. I think people go into it with the best intentions.
Yep.
These fellows make a living off of their driving, and that's fair, right? But it's not a great situation, and I can see parallels with this, so that's what I have to add.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the audience that has any questions or comments about this proposal? Please, come on up again, please.
Regardless of how you vote, I think, and I don't know why it's allowed, because I haven't seen it allowed in that all plant materials should be spec'd out. They're not bushes, they have names. Just like we have names with people, but we have names. And they should be spec'd out by their varieties and their sizes. And I would hope, as I said, there's no street trees, that you require them to plant some street trees, as other developers have been required to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Any motions, any direction to the applicant? I've expressed my concerns about the plan. I'm concerned about maneuverability. And from my perspective, if the board is going to go out on the line and allow a non-conforming buffer to be extended and allow the backyard to be paved, it's got to work. Your plan's marginal. I'm still concerned about the ability for the cars to maneuver in and out of those spaces. And just looking at the plan, again, you have 120 feet, you're proposing to come down the side of the house with about 110 feet of pavement all the way down. it's just a lot of pavement, and then to have all the pavement in the back, I think you can try to accommodate some parking in the actual driveway. You can fit more than 4 cars in the actual driveway. And I just think that, again, I have concerns about the landscaping, I have concerns about these walls, it sounds like some filling was done in the backyard. Haven't even talked about drainage, but this is a lot of pavement to have this many questions about, and if somebody's gonna propose something like this, they need to clearly demonstrate to the board that, or at least in my opinion, that the spaces that are shown for parking are actually accessible via the vehicles, and that cars can easily maneuver in and out of there. We haven't even talked about when it snows. We haven't, I mean, that's a lot of pavement, and you would have to need to clear all of the snow off of that. I mean, you're already compromised at 7.5 feet of width. That might even get more narrow based on Mr. Mena's suggestion of maintaining the buffer. Just something to the applicant, you have no dimensions on your plan in really pertinent locations where you're actually seeking relief. Those dimensions I know are helpful to me as a board member, trying to understand what are we compromising here, or what are we seeking to make more non-conforming, and how does that compare to actually what you're seeking to do. So it's great, the staff can scale it off, but those are the types of dimensions that we like to see located on the plan by the professional surveyor. I don't know if any of the other board members have any questions or similar comments, or have some direction for the applicant. Heap,
I would,
please.
I share all of your concerns, and I would join all the comments that you just made. The only other one that I'd add is that the proposal is seeking relief to extend the pavement significantly within the buffer zone, but the proposal is largely silent on what the applicant would propose as an amenity
Right.
to offset the significant amount of relief that they're asking for. I mean, it is not, I'm not inclined to support the application at this stage for all of the reasons you said, but in addition, I would want, if I were to get there, I would want the applicant to impress the board with what it's gonna do in the backyard and all along the left side property line from the street all the way to the back to provide some sort of offsetting benefit to the neighbor and the neighborhood in terms of landscaping. There may not be a lot you can do in 2 feet or whatever, in the driveway and the lot line, but surely you can propose something and indicate that there's been some thought devoted to that before you ask for the relief to extend that driveway.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, Member Heap, and kind of looking at this a little bit more, they're talking about starting the fence at the back of the house and running it to the back corner in the area, and I see that area between the driveway and the fence, that the so-called required buffer, just being non-existent and just completely abused. I don't know how they would be able to maintain something there in the spirit of the buffer with a fence, with the driveway, and that sort of that narrow area. I mean, a foot is like, a foot's, at that point, you're better off having no buffer. I mean, if I dare say that, but it's just very insignificant to try to have something either grow there or maintain there, especially when it's got a fence on one side and the driveway on the other side. So very, very good comments. Member Ferris, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You know, I agree about the lack of workability of this plan, and it would be nice to see what components might be added to enhance the neighborhood. I mean, to me, there are so many scenarios in Watertown where we've got a driveway all alongside the house. There's a garage that's non-conforming in back, and there's basically 2 spaces with 2 more spaces tandem. So I don't find this to be unlike that in terms of so many homes that are like that. I just don't think that this is workable. I think, for example, that if, probably a similar amount of paving, but I could see that if they paralleled the 10-foot setback and went 1, 2, 3, that there might be 3 spaces back there that might have a little bit more ability to kind of back in and drive out. And so I personally would not be opposed to that. However, I think it would be appropriate for landscaping to happen that takes the place of apparently what was removed there. But I mean, I understand so many people in town have to deal with the hardship of lots that are in a sense non-conforming, and how do you provide parking there? So those are my comments, thank you. But the way it's proposed tonight, I don't think is appropriate.
Any other comments, Member Donato?
I would just add, I'm also concerned about the maneuverability, and it would be great to see the landscaping, also to show the retaining wall on the plan, and turning radiuses too, so that if we were to consider perhaps a few, like less spaces, maybe 3 in the back, like how it would work, how it would fit. And then also if we're talking about possibly extending the driveway, maybe not all asphalt as well, perhaps like something else, some other pervious substance.
Thank you, Member Donato. Member Flora, any follow-up comments or questions?
I agree with everything that's been said. I also echo the concerns that members of the community talked about. I live on Spruce Street too, so it's, you see everywhere how they've just, parking's just taken it over. And right now, judging at least from the Google Maps, it's still a little bit of a green area where you guys are all. So I wouldn't like to set a precedent that means that this continues to become the norm. I also just don't think it's workable the way that it is. I just don't know how anybody could park and get out, and especially if we're thinking about children and how it's all families living around there. And also echoing just if we're taking away green space, what's being offered in return.
Okay, great. Those are excellent comments from my fellow board members. Did you want to add anything? Do you want to work on revising your proposal? What would you like to do? We'll work on revising. Okay. Did you have any follow-up questions? Can you come up to the podium, ma'am? Do you have any follow-up questions of any of the board members?
No, I think I got clear what we're looking for right
Okay.
now, so we'll work on the changing and moving
Okay.
things
Would you like to
around.
continue this matter?
Yes.
Okay. Is there room on the February agenda?
There should be.
Okay. I know we continued a bunch of things out, so, okay, so we'll continue that to February at
Okay.
your request to work on the plans. Is there a motion to allow the continuance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So you're all set for February.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have our second proposal. Oh, yes.
Will another notice be sent out to the neighbors for the next year?
There won't, sir. No, at this point, so the noticing requirements for the initial public hearing, this is continued to February. I suggest that you either utilize the website to make sure that it's still going forward, or give either Gideon or Mike a call in the office and they can update you, or maybe in advance if there's some revised plans that you wanted to take a look at.
Right, that's my next question. When the revised plans come in, will they also be posted on the website?
That I don't know. Do the revised materials get posted as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like they do. Yep.
I pulled one off the website today, so.
Okay, great, yeah, I would just, website, give a call to the office, just to make sure you have the most updated information in advance of the next hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, next case tonight's gonna be 23 Elm Street. We'll read the notice if you guys wanted to get set up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 23 Elm Street, Brandon Banks, NSAJO Holdings Incorporated, doing business as Natural Selections, P.O. Box 391313, Cambridge, Massachusetts 02138. Herein request the Zoning Board of Appeals grant an amendment to the special permit number ZBA-2017-03 in accordance with Watertown Zoning Ordinance Section 5.01.5 L, adult use marijuana at an approved medical marijuana establishment. This is located in the RMUD Regional Mixed Use District.
Thank you.
Good
evening.
evening, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Ross. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Princelow Bell, representing NSAJO Holdings, and members of the board. Good evening. We were last in front of you about 2.5 years ago, if you recall. I think some of your members might have changed, but you were here,
I
Madam
was
Chair.
here.
And
And still here.
and
Dennis was
Mr.
here.
Dove is here. And most of our members were here. The addition is Alex Hardy, a member of our team. I think Tyler Vines was with us to his left, and then Aidan O'Donovan might have had longer here. He remains the president and CEO of the company. And then Dan Linsky was here as well. He's in charge of our security. I just want technical question. Giddy, am I doing something wrong, or as usual? I had technical
That's
problems
okay.
the last time I was
That's
here.
okay, sir.
At the planning board. Yeah, we tried it earlier, and that's,
Function.
and then we tried it with Dan's computer as well, and it didn't.
Or do you have to hit enter on this one?
I mean, maybe, but it's just kind of doing that. I played with that, and I don't think it's connected on your, if that's possible, it's connected on your end. Yeah. Okay. Madam Chair, sorry, and members of the board, sorry about that. So we're having technical difficulties. We were here last, 2 weeks ago for the planning board with the same equipment, and everything worked.
Do you
so-
want to try to figure it out and take a minute? That's fine.
Well, that's up to you. I do have plans that I've supplied to the board, and I could just kind of talk through those as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we have the materials, so it's up to
Yeah.
you. If you have a whole thing set up and you want a few minutes to,
I mean, there wasn't much more in my presentation.
Okay.
I was actually going to update the board as just how many licenses, because the last time I was here was 2.5 years ago. We now know kind of what the greater
yeah, I was kind of
Boston.
wondering what's going on. This is like
Yeah.
one of the first,
We were early, and
Yeah.
we now know, and what I had one map, and it showed that Boston's going to have 52, and Newton's going to have 8. One is already open, or second is about to open, maybe 2 in Newton. So I had the kind of like the picture of about 100 different dispensaries surrounding and including Watertown to kind of give you a picture of what's happening with the industry. Still only 4 are open and really in the greater Boston area, and I think that's part of why you're seeing a lot of the pressures in Brookline, on Netta, on Route 9, next to Boston. There's not a single Boston entity open, and so you're seeing a lot of pressures. We were here 2.5 years ago to request approval for a medical marijuana dispensary. And then we are actually imminently about to open that dispensary where your police department actually got the call from the CCC to check in, to make sure everything's in order, to do the final walkthrough, which is literally the last thing that happens before the site gets,
Here on Elm Street?
yeah, here on Elm Street.
Okay.
And it's all built out. We had a couple pictures of the site, just to show you what it looks like on the inside.
Yeah, I noticed there was like, is there an awning or something over the door, or?
It's been cleaned up, it's been painted, the interior has been extensively renovated. There might be even some in your plans. So we're about to open there, and we're really excited. Everything here at Watertown has been completed. In the meantime, we've been pursuing the adult use application, which is why we're in front of you today. And because that exercise, even though it's just the only thing we're doing is a use change, that exercise requires us to go back, look at all the tenants in the property. This is a 40,000 square foot plaza area with 3 different buildings, with 51 parking spaces. And the uses and the tenants, of course, rotate, as tenants do. And so one of the exercises we had was to go back and look at who the tenants are, recount and reconfirm that we have space for the 22 parking spaces that we have, which are in excess of zoning. We also, during our conversation with you folks back in 2017, there was a tandem parking space to the right of our building. I don't know if you remember this. This is really, going back a couple of years now. But that tandem space was flagged by one of your members as saying, this.
Probably me.
Yeah, it might have been.
I've done that before.
As you should, because it wasn't a compliance space. You were right. So we since restriped. We since restriped the parking lot. We moved that tandem space, and what I did bring with me today is I did bring a red-lined version of the site plan, which I didn't provide in the packet. So I'm just going to hand that to you now, if that's okay.
Okay. And I see on the Hayes site plan, as well as this Tom Godino special here that he put together.
Yeah.
Just for the record, all of the uses on the site, including the dispensary, would require 36 parking spaces in total, and the site has 51, sir?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And we'll be using 22 of those. And what I gave you, and if anyone else wants a copy, I have additional copies. Yeah, I just redlined the difference. What we did essentially, I didn't redline the removal of that space that we saw back in 2017 because we were actually building off of the submission that we gave to you just a couple months ago. I then amended the submission to a smaller packet. So you have 2 packets from me that we gave to you in January, like just a few days ago, literally. But, so this red line is the difference between the November filing and the January filing to the Zoning Board of Appeal. And what you can see is the extra space, right? The big question is, where did the extra space go? It went on Building 1 next to those 3 NS kind of red spaces that we highlighted there. We were able to add 1 other space there and create a buffer for the existing door. And that's where that tandem space went. And we were also able to achieve that by relocating the dumpster that was there near Building 3. We were able to inset that dumpster into the Building 1. It has a kind of a neat little alcove. We shrunk the size of it. And so it allowed us to remove that dumpster and create that additional space. So then it was a matter of just counting to 22 and working with the landlord to make sure that we were okay from our lease perspective and that it wasn't offending anyone else's lease. And that's what you have Mr. Godino's sign off on on basically the parking chart that we submitted to you. It doesn't show our 22 spaces, it just shows the spaces that are required per zoning, so.
So, sir, just before you go any further, I'm just looking at the red line plan, and I'm looking at the previous plan that we have here. It looks like they have the same date, and one of them just doesn't have the red marking. but
Exactly.
Space 8 and 9 was for natural selection on this old plan, and it is on this red plan.
Yeah.
And the 3 spaces, 35, 36, and 37, on the old plan were for natural selection, and on this plan they are. So what changed again?
Those changes were from the last time we were in front of you. Those red spaces for NSAJ Holding weren't for NSJ Holding, they were for someone else.
Oh, okay.
So we moved there. And,
When you say before us, you mean like 2 years ago?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the previous plan, because
Okay.
the way you left it is that we would work with staff to get to the right plan, which we ultimately did. We actually got
Okay.
to a plan with staff, but then this exercise caused us to do it again, to actually redo the plan one more time because tenants changed, and also, we actually had a couple, we weren't quite at 22, I think. I think we had some,
Well, so subsequent to the medical marijuana approval, they originally had some pull-in parking spaces over by the pond side, and there was some very specific, suggestions from the zoning board to make some changes, and so those became parallel parking spaces.
Okay. Over
And
in
originally, there was
14 and 15 over in, okay, yep.
14 and 15,
Yep.
and then on the far side, there was, they originally indicated a stacked space, but the reality is that there's those two dotted line spaces adjacent to Building 3, where
Yep.
there's actually cars parked there today, so that stacked spot went away, and the conditions of that original approval was that whatever the reality was, if it was 17 spaces or 18 spaces, it was appropriate and satisfactory for that approval of the medical marijuana facility. Subsequent to that, they had indicated a 22 parking space for the retail during their discussions with the council, as well as when they submitted. And so this is showing additional spaces on top of those 17 or 18 spaces from the subsequent to the original medical facility approval.
that's right.
And some of that was restriping of 35, 36, 37, and 38, because parking space number 50 was not there because of the original trash containers, which were substantially larger. And so, in discussing that, they downsized the dumpsters and made it a more reasonable size for this smaller use, rather than every single user in the site having, what are they, 14, 15-yard dumpsters. Now they have a much smaller sized dumpster, which allowed that parking space to be reused. So that's, in summary.
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. I mean, some of this actually occurred after, like, between building department and architect, and kind of was a process that occurred, and then I've reemerged now here to try to get you back up to speed as best I can, recognizing that there's a lot of moving parts. But this new plan here allows us to keep our commitment to create 22 spaces, exceeding the zoning requirement, and doing so in a way that's consistent with all the other uses, and that is also works, isn't just making up spaces or putting tandem spaces together. And by the way, those two other spaces that Gideon mentioned that are behind Building 3, we're not counting those as part of
Yeah,
our...
I see those aren't labeled.
Yeah,
Those
they're
are
not
just-
labeled, they're not counted, they're not even, we just merely put them there because there's stuff there. I mean, sometimes it's a car and sometimes it's storage, but it's not counting towards our number. Other than that, I did have a timeline that kind of got into what we've been doing the last couple of years. I'm just trying to think what else I had in the presentation. We do also, in your packets, have, I took the building plans from last time we appeared before you. This might be worth looking at, and it might be easiest to look at. Yep, you're on the page, Madam Chair. If you started on the page of what we submitted to you back in 16, actually, basically, the best way to look at this is, I think, to flip forward 2 pages to the as-built plans, where we highlighted the changes to what was submitted. And you may flip back and forth, perhaps. But basically, what those main changes are, and the middle one is the what was permitted, and then the third page is what was actually built, right? So it's 3 plans. And the changes were very minor, but we're required to notify the building department, or, well, Gideon, all of you, of when there are changes. So the toilets, like, for example, the toilets went from 4 individual toilets to 2. We were able to create a little bit more room in there, but just 2 toilets. The vault, the safe inventory room was increased in size, and instead of having 2 separate offices, we just have 1 office now. A vault room was created as opposed to just a safe in the secure room. Probably the most,
The entrance was
yeah.
changed a lot,
Yeah, that was probably the biggest change. So I think when we first came before you, we anticipated that the handicap access of the conditions on the site were okay for us to get in. And then when we got out there, that just didn't turn out to be the case. So we actually had to build this ramp. It was an unanticipated thing, which actually didn't make our whole trying to make parking spaces job easy. But we were able to fit the ramp and the parking space and everything. The ramp then, it actually winds up creating a better entrance for us. And
Yeah, it
we are.
looks like it is better.
Yeah, it is better. And so what we've done with what was going to be the exit, that's now an emergency alarmed door, which is available for emergency egress. But our customer base and patient base will come in and out through that ramped entry vestibule in there. And
So
then,
people coming in and out of the same door isn't an issue. I know there was a lot of security talk last time about going in a door, you're locked in, you buzzed, glass
Yeah.
windows. So people can leave that way too, that's not a security issue?
not at all. I mean, and Dan Ilinsky is here, and I would invite him, if it's all right, to have him just maybe touch on that quickly and answer your question, if I could.
Yeah, I just remember like the
Yeah.
doors not being open or something when people
the
came
man
in.
trap.
Yeah,
So the current configuration is you come in, we can control the outside door if we want to have that locked. But the thought would be staff, parking attendant would greet you, you'd come in, you would then enter into the vestibule. There's a security operations booth there with a glass front. You show your ID, we swipe you in the system, make sure it's good, make sure you're up to date, you're not on our bad neighbor list. We then push a button and the door opens.
Okay.
And then people can exit out that door as well.
it's just a push, okay.
Yes. And then there's a emergency exit on the left of the building that's got an audible alarm, that if anyone opens it, it automatically sounds, and a local audible alarm, and alerts our alarm company too for a force open.
Okay. Okay, great.
I mean, those were the main kind of substantive, we entered into a host community agreement with the town. We had a vote of the council, unanimous vote of the council. I'm sorry, of course it was not. Councilor Canellis was against, so I apologize. We had a 8-1 vote of the council for the host community agreement, and we appeared before the planning board 2 weeks ago. And that's, I think, I would have probably presented that. I'm really sorry about what happened here. Gideon, I'm sorry, I have no idea. You're never going to let me back in here again. Okay, oh, good. So that's all I have.
So do any of the board members have questions at this point?
I got
Yeah, go ahead.
just one.
Yeah.
I think my only concern is that the 22 parking spaces is sufficient to support the use. And I know it technically complies with the requirements of the zoning bylaw if we're treating this as retail, but I'm not sure that general retail is a good actual proxy for the actual real-world parking demands of this use. Do you have any data based on other uses that have already gotten up and running to suggest that 22 is enough?
Yeah, well, I left you hanging actually on one item that I meant to explain. We are, best case scenario, December 2020, would you say? If everything went perfect?
Yeah, we're about a year out.
Sir, if you're going to speak, either come up or don't speak.
And I was going to suggest actually that Aiden kind of fill in the back end of the question. He has the most experience here on the ground.
I can answer that question. So this comes up a lot where there's a concern that, going from medical to adult use results in much higher volume in terms of, traffic flow of customers in and out of the store. And for the the first movers, it has been the case. Like Mike mentioned, Netta and Brookline, there's a few, handful of others in Newton, for example. That's because this whole entire greater Boston metro is being served by, 3 to 4 cannabis dispensaries. It has nothing to do with the use. It has everything to do with the lack of other open businesses. We anticipate that by the time we're open, like Mike said, we're probably about a year out. I learned my lesson 3 years ago about putting timelines on things. If you had asked me when the last time I saw you guys, I said we're probably about a year out for medical.
I thought he was legit. What's
Here,
going on?
here we are 2.5 years later, and I don't want to, nobody wants to, be disparaging to the state, but it's mainly because of the state bureaucracy. They do not have, they're understaffed. They don't have, transparent processes for inspections. We've been built out for almost a year. We got our certificate of occupancy from Watertown last spring.
Interesting. So what's
But
this other year then?
to answer your question, yeah, that's going through the CCC's process. So, we would submit to them our full applications. Then we go to the very back of a line. They're backlogged with hundreds of applicants. There's a huge push towards prioritizing social equity applicants. They're totally understaffed. They literally have 4 inspectors right now, and we're not able to get on their agenda for our final license. We're hoping to be on next month. That's for medical. For adult use, unless something changes, we're still looking at an entire, several months before we get what's called provisional certificate of registration. Then at that point, we go through an inspection process, which takes place within 60, 90 days after that, or it's supposed to. And that's all after the application is deemed complete, which they bounce it back 3 times over the course of a handful of months before they do that, based on, you forgot to cross a T or dot an I. So, and then after that, they go through a final, you get what's called a final certificate of registration. Then, if you're lucky, you might get scheduled to be on their agenda for a public hearing 60 days later after that. Then you go through that process. Then maybe another 30 days later, they give you a notice to proceed, essentially. So their process right now is entirely, it's very bloated. I hate being on record kind of talking trash on the CCC, and it's not what I intend to do, but
No, it's not trash, it's just we're trying to understand as a local board.
Absolutely,
we've
absolutely.
Approvals and.
And working with the city of Watertown has been fantastic. You guys have been, very transparent in the way things get done, and very expeditious. The reason why we're still not open medical is because it's not us, it's the state. Like I said, we've been built out for a long, long time. And
Have your cultivation
and it's in our
location.
business interest. Our cultivation location is about built out right now too. We're waiting on the final inspections there as well. So it's in our, we're burning money. This isn't free for us. We're paying, 5-figure rent every month, and we have been since 2016.
Yeah.
So it's not, there hasn't been an intentional slowdown, but I fear that we're getting a little bit away from your question, which is that
Parking.
by the time we are open, there will be dozens of other stores that are in the queue ahead of us. In Cambridge, I think Cambridge's number is 4, or it's 8, but they're starting with 4. I think Somerville, we had a map in our presentation. Somerville, another 9, I believe. Boston, 52. Newton, 8. Belmont, 2, I think. Waltham, 5. You're looking at the surrounding communities, not to mention Watertown, 3. We're obviously first in line, but this isn't going to be a Netta situation where where there's 5, 10 operators serving the entire greater Boston metro. Now, as a businessman, I'd love that, but it's just simply not going to be the case. When we came before you originally for medical, the general kind of school of thought was that each community would have 1. So we decided on the 22 parking spaces, and we talked to you guys a lot. We talked to the planning board, we talked to city council, and the thought was that we were going to be one of a handful of operators in Metro West. So even just with medical, we were going to need a lot of parking. We're going to be seeing, we anticipated we'd be seeing about 300 customers a day. Now for adult use, there's a bigger pool of customers, but we're also one of, I think the number was around 97 in the surrounding communities. So the math actually coincidentally works out where it's a pretty similar number. We're still only anticipating seeing around 300 customers a day. You break that over 12 hours, you're looking at, 25 customers an hour. Everyone's in there for 15 minutes in any 15-minute block. You're really only dealing with a handful of people in and out. So it's not actually very high volume retail when the market matures.
Just the only thing to add to that is, you asked about other operators. I know of no other operators, in Newton, they're sub 22, the three that I'm aware of. Garden Remedies, which is actually open in Newton right now, actually has 0 parking spaces.
So I think it's, and I have sort of, I don't want to say similar concerns, but like concerns as Member Heath. And being in the planning profession and doing a lot of research, I was, checking you out today and see that you have other locations that you're pursuing. I think it was Dorchester and Marlborough or something, I don't remember exactly. And
Pittsburgh.
from driving, I drive by both of those locations very frequently. The one on Washington Street in Newton, and also the one on Route 9. And very observant and sort of looking and saying, why does Route 9 have literally lines? It looks like people are waiting for concert tickets or something like that. And this Newton one, aside from the guy standing next to the ATM machine on the sidewalk, you really wouldn't know that there's any activity there. So of course, then I jump online, I do some research, and I see that Newton is by appointment only. And I think that is a big player of who's coming there, when, and how they're going to purchase, whether it's medical or recreational. And I know for me personally that I would be looking for you to be by appointment at this particular location. And I can get into the reasons why, but I wanted the other board members to know that that's how I feel about this. I'm willing, if the other board members support that, I'm willing to do something sort of on a trial. But I feel as though coming out of the gate, we have one chance to get this correct. And our responsibilities, or at least I feel as though part of my responsibility sitting up here is putting parameters on your operation to make sure that it is successful both for you. I'm not trying to limit your number of customers, but I don't want this to become a hangout. I don't want people congregating on Elm Street because the parking lot might be full. While, yeah, you have 22 spaces, I mean, it's a relatively small parking lot. And just sort of the perception of, if somebody sees 1 or 2 cars waiting to get in there, that's going to turn into, that place doesn't work, they don't have enough parking, and I'm sure you both have experienced these types of concerns on projects like this or other projects, or if you do land use permitting. So I know for me personally, that I'd be looking for this to be appointment only, so that person knows I can go there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I can get my, I don't know how it works, if you know ahead what they're getting, or they just book a slot. That way, we know that the people coming to the site, there's appropriate parking, and that they can maneuver in and off the site safely and adequately. And this isn't a situation where people are waiting, the parking lot to tell you, hey, we're full, and they're circling around the block. I mean, a lot of activity going on over there. We have Arsenal Yards coming online, we have hotels, we have Target, which, as you can see now, is jammed all the time, all day, every day, from the minute they're open. Still don't understand how, but they are. So just want to make sure that you're a good fit for the neighborhood, and I personally, again, would be recommending that we put this, however it is, reservation appointment, I don't even know the correct lingos. Again, I just, driving by these locations and being somebody who's tuned into these types of things, again, the Newton one, you don't even know it's there, and the Brookline one, you're wondering, what are they giving away?
Yeah.
And I don't want the what are they giving away scenario in Watertown, ever.
A couple, I think we all have something to, I think you're.
And I didn't mean to sort of hijack your comment,
The
but.
point that I would make is that one of the condition proposals that's in front of the board tonight is in fact what you're actually suggesting. What it's suggesting is, and it's 20B, is that we actually have a grand opening with.
It's more of a soft opening.
It's a soft opening with a reservation program for at least the first week, and the town would have the right, at the call of the chief, to extend that as they see fit. And the reason why we don't want to just say forever, so we have the technology to put a reservation program in at any time. So if we have like a big weekend coming up, or a long weekend, Columbus Day, any of those big, and it's a Friday, and
Had a big week.
or I don't know if that's a big Fourth.
Load up for Tuesday.
Who knows? 4th of July. I don't know what, but but they have, any holiday weekend, and you have, you have Friday payday, and people are, they're like, okay, this could be a big weekend. We have the ability to go straight to reservation, and that's the kind of thing with the close relationship that we have with Dan Linsky and your chief, is to make sure that we do that if there's any issues. If we are looking like Netta for our first week or even.
I know, but it can't even,
Yeah.
it can't even get to
Yeah,
that. Like, once it's that, it's too late.
We recognize that.
Yeah.
We would never be placed off of that kind of temporary reservation system. But the plan was to actually open us with a reservation system, as you just suggested. Now, we can argue about how long that should go for, but certainly if everything's working, just gently ease off on that. We have the technology and the ability to do that. And this condition would prescribe it into our plan. I don't.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit too interim for me, and I guess if it's working great, of course the reservation system's gonna work great. How do you even say when we don't do it, it's gonna, that's the part I miss.
Well,
That's like not taking reservations at a hotel. Well, everything goes great, we're booking up through this, now you don't take them, and 1 million people show up for this one room.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what type of volume is happening on a state level. I mean, there's tons of analytics to be looked at as far as, again, by that point, we very much anticipate there's going to be a handful of, if not dozens, in their surrounding communities, and we say, okay, how many customers are they seeing a day? Do they ever have a line out the door that people have to see when they drive by? And, look at all those numbers, and the planning board's recommendation, or, however this made it into 20B, was for that to kind of be a call of the police chief, because, when I think you said, I don't remember the language that you used, was that, of course, the reservation system's going to work. I actually grew up in Newton, and about, a handful of blocks away from there on Washington Street, right off of Watertown Street, which runs parallel a block to Washington Street. And what that reservation system has led to is exactly what the city kind of didn't want but wants, in a certain sense, where people drive by, like you said, and they say, oh, you don't even know it's there. The people that live in the neighborhood say, why the hell are all these people driving up and down my block, looking at their iPhones, waiting on their reservation? And it's actually created a different set of circumstance where in the surrounding communities, again, I grew up on Adela Ave, you can look it up, it's not too far from there, where I've heard of complaints of people saying that, this reservation system is all app-based, everything is app-based in 2020, that essentially it's leading to people looking, saying, okay, well, I need a reservation, so I can't come back for 45 minutes, now I gotta drive around or kind of be more aimless, leads to, can potentially lead to loitering, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not arguing one way or the other, I'm just saying it's not foolproof. Unless you said you have to reserve a week out or something, which would be crazy. But
Yeah.
so just to throw that out there, that is kind of an issue that I've heard that's happened.
And again, I'm not an expert, I want to try to be proactive in setting you up to be successful. Couple different distinctions, again, saying we're not going to be Netta, I mean, who knows what you're going to be, but, I mean, this location is accessible, it's right off the highway, and I don't know if it's good or bad that you do have parking, because people will know, oh, there's plenty of parking over there, even if it's busy, I can wait or something like that. And this type of establishment, which I am supportive of, is you go, you get your stuff, and you leave. You don't hang out, you don't congregate. It's like when I go to the supermarket, I go in, buy my food, and leave. I'm not hanging out in the parking lot. I'm not, waiting for somebody to come meet me or something like that. Again, personally, I think it should be, you do the reservation system unless you come back to us and say that you're going to do something else. I don't think it should be on an interim basis. Again, I don't see how you would know without that what's gonna happen.
Yeah, Dan, please.
So I think the safety and security issue for Watertown Police, I think they're comfortable with the systems and practice. The biggest concern is traffic and parking as well. And that's why when the chief
And
did.
like hanging, people just like.
Yeah, so there's no hanging, which is why we're going to have personnel out in the parking lot that are parking attendants, because somebody, they sign the good neighbor agreement and they decide, hey, I'm going to use this while I'm in the vehicle. Well, you're no longer coming back to us again. That's not happening, and we need you to get off the property, quite frankly, because we want other customers to come in. And the chief brought 2 of his traffic enforcement officers down because his concern is traffic and parking and enforcement. I understand exactly what you're saying. we want to have the ability, I want to have the ability to turn appointments on. So even if we didn't have appointments, and it's coming up on a Friday night, and we know, it's getting crazy, it's been crazy the last Friday nights, the ability to not have appointments on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but Friday to turn them on, SMS our customers to say, on Friday, if you don't have an appointment, don't drive onto the property unless you've confirmed an appointment. Because we want to control
How
that
would
volume.
people know that, sir? Let's say I was a
They would-
regular customer and I go on Tuesday or whatever my day is.
So much like Dunkin' Donuts, I'm the last guy in the Boston Police Department who got electronic deposit. I used to go and actually get the check just because that's what I did. So I'm not and I still go to Dunkin' Donuts and I wait in line and order my coffee.
I do too.
And 15 millennials have ordered their coffee, picked it up, had their lunch in the time that I get mine. The customers will be going online and pre-ordering stuff. We have the ability to say, I want 2 of these and 1 of those. And our fulfillment team fills it, puts it out, it's waiting for you. It's not a 7-minute trip into the store. You come in, you swipe your ID, you're good to go. You come in, swipe your credit card or pay your cash, boom, you're out the door. So it's a 3-minute trip. So they're probably going to be driven to either the app or the website to see what's going on. We have the ability to, quite frankly, it's a commercial venture, so we want to know who our customers are, want to advertise, hey, we've got a new strain, a new product, and market to them.
Loyalty systems
Right.
with, with just like any other retail, 95% of people, Tyler could speak to the exact number, but the vast majority of people opt into that. Even, there's every now and then somebody wants full anonymity, but the vast majority, that's kind of becoming an old school way of thinking, the anonymity, the vast majority of people would opt in.
A lot of clients,
So
we
you
can
would
send an
what,
email
email them
to,
and
text
say,
them and say,
hey,
hey,
no
just to let you
walk-in
know,
today?
Friday afternoon, it looks like it's, so on Friday afternoon, starting at noontime, it's appointment only. If you don't have an appointment, you're not going to be allowed into the property. Our parking attendant, could focus up the head of the driveway to make sure if we're getting to the place where, hey, do you have an appointment? If you got it on your phone, you drive in. If you don't, you got to go and, get an appointment down the road. So, and I want to, I think Chief Long and the Transportation Department in Watertown, there might be days, Watertown Parade, Founder's Day, that we don't think of or know of, and we're not concerned about it, but the chief in public safety might have a concern, and they might say, hey, we want you to turn on appointments only, we want you to, delay opening an hour or two. So I think having the chief with the ability that you say to have control over what we have to do based on the needs of public safety would be helpful. We're also going to have a year of recreational numbers to see what, medical numbers to see, what those numbers are. Although, is 22 right, or is 22 small? And if that's the case, do we have to talk to the landlord about getting more spaces? But I think it's an evolving process based on, how it is. And the CCC now used to be I'd give it a security plan, we were good to go. Now there's an interim opening security plan. So they found out when they opened up in, the western part of the state, and 40,000 people showed up on Christmas for their packages, that they needed to develop a plan. And when Salem did it, they had off-site parking, they had shuttle services, they set that up, it worked for a couple of weeks. Then the volume got to the point where they've gotten away from that, and they don't need to. And the CCC is looking for, and I believe that was the final call today that Chief Long received for our medical facility, hey, are you okay with this? Are you comfortable? Are there any concerns, any issues? Are there any mitigation strategies we need to hold these guys that you want before we go forward? And if he had them, I'm sure the chief would have said so. And we have to get approval from the chief for kind of an opening strategy. All the new dispensaries are doing that before they go online, even in addition to your everyday security plan. That's kind of a, let's get up and running and get equated to putting fish in an aquarium, right? You have to let them sit there for a while and figure out what works and doesn't work, and then if the conditions are great, good. If not, we either need more restrictions and more changes, or we can take some of the restrictions off and make it run.
Okay.
Yeah, I also just want to reiterate that, I would be very, very surprised if between now and the time that, again, it took 2.5 years with medical. We're about to open hopefully next month, but when we got our final approval from you was, mid-2017. So it took 2.5 years. Cautiously optimistic this time will take a little bit less, but it's certainly not going to happen in the next handful of months. In the year-ish that it will probably take, there will be a lot more of these stores coming online and taking the burden off of Neta, essentially, who now serves the entire greater Boston area, including in Boston proper, which Mike can speak to a lot better than I can, being an ex-city councilor there, but Boston will have 52 adult use licenses. How many do they have open right now? a whopping 0.
Yeah.
That's part of the issue. These are not we did this in Colorado for a decade. This is normal brick and mortar retail in a mature market once things normalize. And they're well on their way there. It's just taken us a long time to get here. And in the meantime, it's been what you see at Neta, which is admittedly a zoo. I'm not going to defend that. But we are, it's just not, it would be very, very, very surprising if nobody else, there's so many in the pipeline coming down, again, in Cambridge, I know of a handful, there's, I think you said 3 more in Newton that are already ahead of us. We could put together the numbers, but there's.
It's good that you have those numbers, but
Yep.
those people could run into situations. I mean, you said Belmont, we'll probably all be long gone before that happens, but, again, I think it's just important to get ahead of it and to set you guys up for because, once the one day it's Neta, it's too late. Like, once that happens, that's what we don't want to happen. We want it to be just like any other retailer except Target that's jammed, doing business and people being able to access the products that they want to access easily and availably, getting back in their cars and getting off the property.
Joe, one more piece of data that might be helpful to you. If you go online, if you look at the CCC's numbers, they actually put out the total revenue and the total number of stores that are open. So the total number of stores are open, I think it's around 30 or 32. The total revenue was $320 million last year. And we're talking about adult use, we're not talking about medical. So we know that Neta, from published reports, was around $79 million. Which is the largest in the country, the most revenue in the country. That leaves about 8 to 9 million average per year for the rest of those operators. And they're not doing quite as spectacular as maybe, as we're seeing with the Netas of the world. And if you just back out that math, in terms of the throughput of people, those are the stories you're not hearing about. Those other 29 dispensaries, they're doing well. But this is now with only 30 open, only $320 million worth of revenue it's going to be the same people in Massachusetts. They all want, 20% is the average estimate of who would be customers. And so,
The Lynn one's a good example of that. Apotheca.
Yeah.
The first
Yeah.
one in Lynn opened, 100,000 people live in Lynn. It's called Apotheca. I know the ownership well. And they had a big, like we do, which we'll gladly adhere to, kind of a grand opening plan in conjunction with the chief of police, and it was a condition of their special permit that they would have an overflow lot for their first month. From what I understand, they've been open for more than a month now. They haven't used the overflow lot once. They didn't even need it on their first Friday when they were running, crazy specials and all sorts of things. So.
And they're on the Linway.
And they're on the Linway. I mean, Neta is kind of its own beast. I don't.
Yeah, it seems like they've really.
They were the second. I think they were the second dispensary open in the state, right? Weren't they? Were there second or third? Right after ATG was one of the first for medical, and they're green line accessible, et cetera, et cetera. So you can tell we hate getting lumped in with that, but
Yeah.
But that
No,
was-
again, it's just because of those are the ones that I see, and I always I like to do my research anyways and get information and, want people to be successful
Those are
here
two
in
kind
our
of-
community too.
yeah, those are two kind of extreme examples in that Garden Remedies has 800 square feet and literally 0 parking. So of course it was reasonable for Newton to put some serious restrictions on them. And not to mention they're the second in Metro West, to ever get open. And Neta we just talked about, whereas we were anticipating being number, 15, 20 at best, and also that we have the parking. So, you can hear that we're, a little bit concerned about what we feel might handicap us if we have to commit to an indefinite, appointment system. Especially with the 2 other operators in Watertown that are coming down the pipeline. I think there's a community outreach meeting for one next week.
The other change in the industry that's coming that will impact this is deliveries. So facilities now have the ability to deliver to people's homes where they don't have to go and buy it, and those are being licensed by the Cannabis Control Commission now. So I think you'll see volumes at the store change to where, my wife, I get all my groceries delivered, somehow they show up on my front step. I haven't been to
welcome.
Stop and Shop in years, but that seems to be the way most people are going to have their products delivered. So I think that'll take some of the parking stress off of the stores.
And we just don't want, I mean, I appreciate you want to set us up to make sure that we don't fail. We'd be concerned that if people start saying, well, it's appointment only, I'm just going to drive here where it isn't, we just are concerned that customers would would go somewhere else just on the fear, the perception that they're not going to be able to, that they're going to be waiting. Even though these
I
stores.
was just gonna say, like, those lines, like I said, I mean, I've only seen it from Route 9, but that's no 15-minute line.
But the vast, so there's 32, I think. Neta's really the only one that has lines. In Leicester, when they were also the first in all of the eastern seaboard to open for recreational, they had lines too. Now that there's 30, that store, I think, is seeing less than 100 people a day. Spread that over 12 hours, you can
Yeah.
watch an episode
I mean,
of Seinfeld
and I
in between when
know
somebody
that,
gets in and out.
that's sort of the first one, lines, porta potties, the whole thing, and all
Yeah, it's
that
a
kind of
media
stuff.
frenzy,
I'm not
and-
even thinking about that kind of stuff. I'm just thinking, you're in a good location, you're in a good market, you're the same market as Newton and probably Neta, and you do have parking, so those people that are driving, it might be easier to come to your location than it is to go to Newton and wait, or whatever the situation might be, circling around, waiting for whatever happens on the phone.
And we hope it is. We hope that they, that it is a very easily accessible, seamless experience. I think with the amount of parking we have over 12 hours in a day, it would take a pretty high number of people for there to ever be anybody outside the facility. I mean, we also have a massive, waiting area where we can also set up stanchions and fit, I don't know what the fire marshal code, do you know how many people would be allowed in that room? I mean, at least a dozen.
Okay.
So, yeah, a total of about 90 in the building. So, it would be we'd have to be seeing thousands of customers in a single day, which again is unheard of in anywhere in the state except for Neta. And
Except for right next door.
Well-
I don't know, why do I have these concerns? I don't know, except for the one right there, So, again, I don't wanna, I wanna hear from the other board members, I wanna hear my fellow board members' concerns, but, maybe they can shed some light on my opinions.
Just to
Please,
speak,
Gideon, yeah.
just to speak to these specific conditions are new, both 19 and 20. Steve Magoon and I talked about this in depth and reached out to the police department as well. And that's why we crafted the conditions this way, in order to, we don't know what this particular, we don't know what.
Right.
It's a new use. It's a new use in Watertown. So we wanted to be cautious at the beginning, but we also didn't want to create over-restriction for either them or for the police or for our department. And Steve wanted to, assure everyone that the Department of Community Development and Planning would be very involved with this, and it wouldn't just be a police department review and process. And we have both parking management, which is not just short-term but long-term, and so we're expecting a lot of information on how their parking is being dealt with initially and then long-term as well. And that's condition 19. And then
Yep.
condition 20 is about how it's operating both when it first opens and then as it continues to operate. And so we felt as a department that our gut is retail type use. We don't want to regulate it, but in this case, because it's a new use, that at the staff level, we felt comfortable that we could do that if the board felt that that was appropriate.
Yeah, and I think the conditions are wonderful. I think that I just get concerned, the plan shall include limitations for the first week of operation. That's a little hard and fast. I'd like that to be a little more, in favor of the board, that it's, it's the town telling them you don't have to do this anymore, not a good attorney coming back saying, well, it only said a week, and,
He's not a
know-
very good attorney.
Well, he's good enough to represent you, so he must be fairly good.
Thank you.
But, I see those types of things. I've been down the road before with conditions and whatnot and interpretations and that type of stuff. And I just think that the conditions should be in our favor, and the town being the ones telling you, you don't have to do this anymore because we don't have these problems. Not, hey, it works great with the reservations, we're thinking about getting rid of it. And then it's sort of, So we can get back to that. I just, maybe I'm the only one that feels that way and everyone else doesn't, and then it's not an issue. But thank you very much, Gideon, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the board. Member Donato, please.
Gideon, as a follow-up question, I was noticing in the condition, it says, if it's shown that the parking and traffic management is not an issue. So who's the one who's doing that judgment? Is it Chief Lawn? Is it Chief Lawn in conjunction with planning staff?
It'd be DCDP, so Steve Magoon and Chief Lawn would be working on that together with our department and police. And if there's other, if there's DPW, it's a whole town discussion, but they would be the two people that would be making that decision together.
Okay.
I just noticed that C and D are transposed on the thing, so I'm going to note that. No, that's right, it's getting late in the day.
I really appreciate the opening day strategy and being forward-thinking about that. And just remind me, the parking attendant, will that be somebody that continues on, or is that just initially to help temper the
Yeah, so
flow?
that, I believe that is a condition in there somewhere that, yeah, that's a question for the lawyer. I think it was one of the planning board recommendations, but.
Forever having someone standing outside, did that make it as a condition? I'm not, it's not,
Might not have.
yeah, it's not something that's hitting me. I would have found.
It's more
It's
tailored to the
it's not, it's part of the
day
opening strategy. And
Yeah.
so if it's determined that it's needed for a longer period, there's a wayfinding program that was required in order to make sure, because of the location of this inside the site, so that's more of a signage program, longer term, but during that first stage.
There is, total coverage of the parking area with cameras and personnel monitoring it all the time, and Dan could talk about that. In terms of having a human outside all the time, I don't think we committed to that, but, I mean, it's something we can talk about if that's something that people are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're less opposed to hard coding as compared to indefinite appointment system. That
Who's
being.
the person your security guy just spoke of that said that's going to be checking people's phones when they enter the lot?
So that is part of the strategy, and that is sort of the opening, and we do plan on having a parking attendant for as long as it feels necessary. We're absolutely, I mean, we're going to be, it's 100% part of our strategy. I just don't think that the condition made it into our special permit for medical, and we're here for our special permit for adult use. That being said, we would want to make sure that any language that does make it in its condition is, reasonable and that there's good faith. What I'd be concerned about is all of a sudden, 100 are open in the area. We're seeing a couple customers an hour, and we're paying somebody, $40,000 a year to stand out there. Well, you'd be surprised. Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking in hyperbole a little bit, but once the numbers go down, which they absolutely will, these are always compressing markets. I've been through this in several other spaces, and it's just simply a fact of life. I mean, there's only so much cannabis that's consumed in a given area. It's a function of the local, the local GDP really, and the amount and the rates. So, in the greater Watertown area, there will be X amount of cannabis sold in any given year. And if there are 100 licensees, that would be spread pretty evenly among them. Obviously, some would be better than others, depending on their business acumen, their location, et cetera, et cetera. But if there's one, it's going to be a zoo. So where I'm going with that is just to say that we would want to make sure that there was language wherein, once things slow down, which they absolutely will, as sure as I'm standing here, I guarantee they will at some point, that we don't have a very hard time coming in and making sure that we're able to trim costs in order to stay afloat. I'd be worried that if we have to go back through a whole another public hearing process and, there's.
I think, and again, I think, having the conditions in here this is a public forum, people can come and speak here, people can bring testimony. If we stipulated something in here that was a little bit stronger and we required parking people, whatever it might be, and, you come in and say, oh, we don't have this problem, and there's 75 people in here saying, there's some guy in my driveway waiting for his whatever on his phone. So that's the opportunity in the forum that at least this board and this sort of room can have. Not doubting the police department or Steve Magoon's ability to do any of that. It's just, this is a public process, these conditions are enforceable, and if you wanted to, we've had people that have had conditions and we require a one-year review and they come in and everything's wonderful and we take away the conditions. It's just, I think that, and again, I'll repeat it again.
And that's part, if there's a review period, that's
Well, that's
more-
kind of what
much
I
more
was thinking when
much
I
more
started
palatable
talking
for-
about these things. I
for
mean,
the-
I
for the
just
parking
think,
attendant.
anybody can put a plan together for a week and make it successful. It's week 2, week 3, week 4. And again, I hope you're super busy. I hope that you have to be on appointments. We want people to be successful. Frankly, I think the more activity to the site that's managed appropriately, it creates a level of safety for me too, as well. Having something with not a lot of activity and dark and, that might not be the best scenario either. So,
Madam Chair, just if I may, we're very open to including language in that condition to broaden it, to, include a parking attendant and create, it doesn't have to be limited to a week. You can put language like a period of time, but our concern was that government has a way of just locking things in.
Yep.
And then,
Especially in we kind of have PTSD, if you will, where
No, I know,
being in a
and
very
I
controversial, there
I
are so many
get-
people
I-
that come out to these, they just hate cannabis, you can't change their mind no matter what. And, it's typically not at this point, but at a city council hearing, in other communities you've been in, they come up by the dozens with pitchforks, and they will find any way to pick you apart and
Yeah, I mean, we
and that
already
can kind of
approved-
change the sentiment in the room, and that's kind of the concern that we have.
I mean, we already approved the medical there, and again, I'm not speaking, some of the board members were here, some weren't, and a lot of things have changed in those couple of years. I mean, I don't think anyone ever visualized those kinds of, peak periods and those types of things. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. Let's try to hear from the other members, and then if there's some consensus to modify things, we can get into that in a little bit. Did you have any questions or comments? Do you have follow-up there?
Yeah, just
please.
security, is anything about security changing now with adding on the adult use? Anything different from what we had heard before for the medical use?
The same access control, same security programs. Tonight, we were going over RFP to get contracted security officers who would be double dutied. They would have the parking lot. We want to kind of set the tone. People come in, they see a visibility vest. They know the security official there. I'm more concerned about behavior in the parking lot, hanging out, hey, let me use this on my ride home, making sure security is making people get off the property. So extending the security outside the door is probably one of the aspects. Other than that, I think, we're pretty consistent with where we were before. The technology's there, the cameras are very good. We've got dual systems with 2 monitoring companies. And
That's it?
we also have a system, we put a generator on the roof to make sure that, God forbid.
I just also wanted to speak up to, in regard to the security, we've actually specifically are not asking for the details of the security plans now that we, I think, so it is being reviewed by the police department, and we don't actually want to know the details in a public setting. So I don't know how much detail you're getting. I'm sure you're only telling, but I just
There's a
wanted to.
generator on the roof to make sure that all the systems continue to run even in blackouts and cold weather.
and then also interestingly, statutorily, the security for medical is actually at a higher level than it is for adult use, in part because it was created at an earlier time, and in part because there's higher dosages and things like that, but
Also less licensees. The initial code called for 35 medical licenses. The initial code called for 35 medical licensees in the entire state. That was then overhauled to open it up to the masses, essentially, to where the communities are the ones deciding numbers, not the state. But when they updated the licensing process, they didn't update the code.
So a good example of this is a medical marijuana dispensary is not allowed to be within 500 feet of a place where children commonly congregate, and an adult use facility is only to be within 500 feet of a place of a K through 12 school. It's interesting, and then some of the communities have kept the old definition for the medical, and so I'm going on, but
There's a lot of examples of how,
throughout the regulations that they just kept in there, that are actually more stringent. So being a co-located facility, adult and medical, we actually kind of have the best of both worlds in terms of security, and the things we need to do.
Thank you. And I guess I would just add for me personally, in terms of the parking and a reservation system or not, I'm, I guess, leaning on the side of more trying to achieve some sort of balance, like an initial trial to see how it's going, and, you know, achieving a balance through feedback from Chief Lawn and planning staff as to how it's working and if it needs to continue like that or not.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Member Ferris?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So could you just explain, I guess I am having a bit mixed emotions about whether there are appointments or not, whether, appointments would be taking place on, in a sense, random days if you decide they're going to be busier days, and how people would really understand that that's the case, whether there would be somebody staffing the lot, or whether security is happening from inside the building, in which case, how would they really detect that much if somebody's kind of loitering around in a car, since they're looking at a camera from inside the building. So I'm just kind of a little confused about the details. I think you've explained plenty, but I think that you've been saying like a few different things. I myself am also just concerned about the 1 week time limit. And so I would think that, that we would want to have the limit extended somewhat, but also at a point where, whether it's the police department in combination with others, make the determination that it's okay to transition over. I think I feel the same way about a security aspect as well. I did drive onto the lot on Sunday, and, just even getting in and off the lot, I think, is a bit of a challenge. Number one, it's hard to know that the building is back there, so I'm sure people will get to know that as they become customers, which is good. But I don't know, it was probably spaces 1 through 6 that looks like there are rental trucks that are parked there, that were parked there on Sunday, that are quite a bit deeper than what the spaces are. So it's a narrow, so I don't know whose trucks they are. They all had the same signage, whatever it was. I don't know what aspect of the site they belong to, but I do know that it creates a pinch point at the entry beyond what is illustrated by just the parking diagram, which obviously narrows down to 1 lane car going in and out because of, I assume, a retaining wall to the left of number 18. So I have those just concerns about the site. I don't have a concern about the overall use. I think that, and I think as you've explained, and we don't need to elaborate more, as more facilities open up, I think everything is going to level out. But I think for the initial period, we do need to be mindful of how people are getting there and with what frequency, and how the lot itself is managed. Because I guess I could foresee that on a super popular day, for whatever reason, with the configuration of the lot, and if the lot were not supervised or staffed on the outside on a day like that. Yeah, it's bottlenecked. You can't have a car entering and exiting at the same time with spaces 1 through 6, let's say.
Yeah.
So if it were a super busy day, it just seems like there would be a bit of confusion happening, with people in cars trying to move around inside.
Yeah,
I have those concerns.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Let me try to unpack a couple of it. I mean, first of all, the reason why we did building 2 in the rear was under the initial kind of pressure of saying, look, we don't want this thing to be front and center. Hey, welcome to Watertown. Here's our cannabis dispensary. And so we actually deliberately, I think we had an opportunity at one point to be in building 1 and we deliberately put it back in Building 2. We certainly had other locations we were looking at as well that were more, and we like this because it didn't do that. It wasn't, it was a little more in the background.
I just apologize for interrupting. Again, we've all kind of spoken a lot this evening, and I don't know that we're going to be saying any new stuff, but I'm not questioning the placement of the building. I'm not questioning necessarily the configuration of the lot because it's a given, and we've already reviewed it for the medical component. What I am questioning is, in a sense, the management of the flow of people coming in and out, so whether that's by appointment and whether there's somebody manning the lot, and whether there is somebody at the lot saying, it's full, or you don't have an appointment, or whatever. So those are the parts that, in our dialogue, I don't feel have been made concise and are resolved, and I think that we're going to resolve it in our comments.
Hopefully, I can take 2 minutes and hopefully give you some sense for the flow. So it's going to be ever-evolving and changing. So we didn't want to hire just personnel that are security who work directly for the company. All personnel in the company are going to have some security training and some security functions. We are getting contracted outside security, professional security teams who have the ability to, if we need 4 guards, get us 4 guards. If we need 1 guard, get us 1 guard. I anticipate the early opening, we would have one of our contract security personnel at the driveway.
At the curb.
At the curb, because and I think they're green cleanup
Yeah,
vans.
they're
Yeah.
green. I don't know who, again, what company they are, but.
Hopefully, I haven't seen them in the daytime, and they would definitely get there tonight. We want to control that access in and out of the curb. If we're on an appointment only, we need to be at that pinch point to make sure that you don't take that turn.
Right.
Unless you've got an appointment. So that would mean somebody's going to be at the top of the curb, and we're going to have somebody in the lot at the front door who will be making sure that there's no product use in the parking lot, moving people in and out, helping people get out of the spaces.
So I don't know what you're describing. Are you describing the first week, or are you describing ongoing activity?
So this is my plan for the first week.
Okay.
Is, someone's at the driveway, somebody's at the front door.
Okay.
You come in, there's a staff member, not necessarily security, but somebody who is making sure you get the good neighbor agreement, checking you against the system, and buzzing you in. And then we have a point of sale people, they make the sale.
Sure.
You go back out, our security staff will make sure you don't do anything improper in the parking lot and get you off the route.
Okay.
If we get to the point wherever we are where we're not appointment only, then that person on the front driveway might be able to move down, and we might be able to lose one security officer. That security officer will have additional duties. So when deliveries come in, I want them to be at the front door, go to the vehicle. One of the delivery staff will get out with security guard. They will escort them in. They'll get signed in, get their visitor passes, get buzzed in, and go right to the product room, sign, and then that security guard will go back out. If we've got somebody who has a medical emergency inside the facility and the security guard is working in the parking lot, that parking lot attendant/security official will come in and deal with the medical emergency. Once that's abated, we'll go back out. Depending on the volume, if we need 1, 2, 3, we want to have the ability. That's why we hired outside teams who can, based on a day, staff us up different amounts of people and move personnel into it, as opposed to we've got 2 employees that do security, 1 bangs in sick, and we don't have coverage for it. I don't know if that was helpful as far as.
Yeah, so again, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Again, I'll just ask all of us to just be concise. But I understand that for the first week, and I guess what I agree with what other members have said is that we just want to make sure that the transition or the management from an appointment scenario with staffed parking to a scenario where people just drive in without staffed parking does not happen because it says 1 week, that it happens because someone is signing off on it.
Whatever the timeline is on it, so if we're on appointment, then there's going to be 2 people outside in the parking lot.
I think the language calls explicitly for Chief Long to sign off on it. Does it not? I mean, if
Yes, but it also says 1 week, which I think we've indicated that we're.
Yeah, I think really what this comes down to is sort of a negotiation, if you will, and I think there is a way, I would hope, legally to have our cake and eat it too, where everybody's happy, where we say, okay, if you want that period extended, maybe we work in language that says, okay, for the grand opening lasts a week, but for the first 45 days thereafter, you still at least have a staff on weekends, or in conjunction with Chief Lawn. We want what we don't want to have happen is it's just like what happened with Apotheca and Lynn. They said, we're the first one on the North Shore, the second one, and it's hundreds of thousands of people, we're going to be slammed, and then they weren't, and then they're overstaffed. So what we don't want to have happen is be stuck in a position where on a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., when there's, like I said, literally not a single customer coming into the store, that we're having to pay several people to be out standing in the lot, kind of shivering in the cold.
I can appreciate that. So
Hopefully we can kind of
I can
put a
appreciate
mechanism.
that. And so I think I'm stating with other board members that the decision about when that happens and how it happens is not going to be based on like a calendar date versus someone signing off on it.
And I think the word limitation here, it's like, it's being, like, it could be interpreted as the limitation is you're taking appointments and/or the limitation is a week. It's probably not just a good word choice. If you read it, the plan shall include limitations for the first week, that could mean the limitations of appointments or limiting it to a week. I think we can tweak the you know what I mean? But yeah.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
It could mean that too, so.
You could definitely tweak this language.
Yeah, let's hear from Member Heap and Member Floor, because they might have some concerns too, and then we can try to loop them all together.
I think my concerns are the same. I am generally supportive of the application. The only concern is, I think, a reservation operating exclusively pursuant to reservations in the first window of time after they open is a good idea. I think a week seems probably too short for that period. But I'm also persuaded that after a certain amount of time, it's probably not going to be necessary anymore. So, but I think it should remain in place until someone, and that might be us, that might be the chief, is persuaded that it's no longer necessary. So the obligation is on the applicant to make that showing to someone, and then it can be lifted at that time. I think it should probably also, though, once lifted, be something that can be snapped back into place if ever necessary. It's not like it would go away reservations would go away forever, whether it be a month or two after.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a situation where, I think you had mentioned, it's not Monday through Friday or something, but on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, you have to do that because those are your busiest period or something like that. So I think the board and the town is the one that needs the flexibility to put controls and stipulations based on how you are or not impacting that corridor. You just mentioned something that I didn't even think of that. So you're not coming in the lot unless you have an appointment. So now we're gonna be stopping cars on Elm Street, you're not coming in here. That doesn't work either. So these things have to kind of be, Elm Street, people are coming off, they're trying to get to Target. It's not that wide there. The hotel's there. We have other stuff further down. I don't believe there's any street parking on Elm Street because of the width of it. So I think these are all kind of things and understanding, this is new here. And again, I'm speaking, I see two separate things. I see one that takes appointment and never an issue ever, and I see no appointments and, tailgating style outside. So, and this is just based on observations from not even just driving by in my car and wondering, why isn't there anybody out there? I don't understand. Why is there a line over here? Two exact same businesses, different procedures. One has tons of people out front and the other one doesn't. So I'm just basing it from what I see. It looks like the reservations help, or at least from my perspective.
If you went to Lynn, you probably would see nothing, you would see the same thing. You'd say, why is nothing going on here? And
31 of 32. Anywhere, not just Lynn.
Yeah, anywhere,
Yeah.
really. I think
Or any dispensary in any other state.
you might be
Yeah.
observing the Netta phenomenon, which we in the industry
Yeah,
are all feeling because.
We're beating a dead horse. I mean,
Yeah, we've said it.
been over
I think I don't want to speak for other board members, but I think we all agree that if there's no lines out front, the reservation program probably isn't necessary anymore.
Right.
I mean, it's just the only difficulty we face is we don't know when that switch is gonna get flipped.
So do you want to, I mean, I know that you haven't all talked, do you want to talk about the way this condition is written? Because the last sentence and then the, part C could be better written to clearly identify. I mean, like, if it is shown that the parking and traffic management is not an issue, regular operations are allowed to, I mean, so it's basically, at any time, that could almost be just, that could be
Yeah,
the
but-
new C. I'm just asking if there's language in
So
here.
what if people are walking there? I mean, there could be no parking problem, but there could be 60 people in line. Well, I don't think we want that either.
Right, so I guess I mean, operations, it's not talking about, yeah. So,
Well, let's hear from member Floor. Do you have any follow-up comments?
Yeah, maybe it's because I don't drive, but I don't feel as strongly per se about it.
Okay.
I think that you're right next to the bus, so the 70 bus is right there. The Watertown Greenway is behind. I think if you have a TDM plan emphasizing that those are other means of getting around, that you don't have to drive, especially if you're buying substances, maybe consider other means of transportation. I think what I would advise is you're likely going to have a lot of Uber and Lyfts, because I know a lot of people that are around my age that are possibly interested in going there likely don't have a car. So it's managing where the drop-offs are for those types of transportation. I agree that in the beginning, and I know that this is a year away, so if things move quickly, there may be other stores opened by then, but it's been 3 years, so I'm not holding my breath either. But I know the demand will likely be lower. By having some sort of plan that isn't, I would say not permanent, so that it does allow that flexibility. Maybe, the first week or the first weekends or something, where people can just check in. And I know for the Neta, is it? You can Google it and it says by reservation only, so, we don't plan on going there because we know it's, by reservation only, so then you can book it online. So that's another way to do it. I think if you're looking to get cars off the street, maybe incentivizing people that walk or that take the bus, by, I don't know, if offering them discounts or whatnot, loyalty cards, et cetera. That would be good. And then just, I mean, I know on Google Maps, you already know what hours are the busiest. So if I'm going shopping for anything, I know when not to go because Google tells me when it's busy. But telling people, once you have your analytics that I'm sure you will have, being like there will be lower lines if you come at this time versus this time. But I think it's good. It looks, on the photos I see, you only have 3 bicycle, racks. Is that the case?
It's 3 that are double-sided?
I see photos, 3 double-sided. Okay.
Yeah, the site plan shows, I think, some,
It shows 6, but I think that's because they're parked on both sides.
Yeah, it's room for 6.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to have bike parking. But those would be my comments. I think it's a really good location, especially since Arsenal's opening across the street. There's going to be a lot of entertainment around for people. But I would agree on a good plan for the rollout and making sure that it's not permanent so we're not damaging any potential business. That's all.
Thank you. Do any of the other members have any follow-up comments?
No.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add?
I would just say that I think, that word week kind of stuck in the craw of a few members, and I can understand. I don't think.
Yeah, we're going to get, did you want to add anything? We're going to get into going, okay.
The
So-
only thing I would add is just to hopefully inform your conversation a little, whatever review type of process you do implement, and I would hope you would do this anyways, but to kind of make sure that it's kind of clearly laid out. What I would hate to have happen is that we all fall victim to sort of circular logic where we implement an indefinite appointment system, but then we got a ton of people driving up, and we have to tell them to leave, say appointment only, and then they go park down the street, and everybody says, oh, this place is a zoo, and it's actually because of the appointment system. I just want to make sure that there would be controls in place.
Yeah, I mean, there could be 15 different scenarios that
Yeah,
happen.
no point in
I
going
mean, we
through
could
each
sit
one.
here and play out every single one until 2 o'clock in the morning. So, a couple things, and I think, the first condition here, that we have 2 conditions that were added by the staff. I don't think 19 is more the TDM and getting people to carpool and that kind of stuff. The second one, under 20A, says, based on the traffic study submitted, the petitioner shall develop an opening day strategy for adult use that provides for police details, parking attendants, and wayfinding assistance to minimize disruption during the initial opening period. The strategy should be reviewed on a daily basis with the town, police, planning, to evaluate its continuing need. So, me personally, my concern with that is the wayfinding should be permanent. That shouldn't be for the opening day. You want people pulling here, parking in rear, the wayfinding should be permanent. I don't know how the other members feel, but getting people to the parking spaces in the back and in the door is the number one goal. Somebody parks in one of the front spaces, now they're walking down the ramp, it's narrow, someone's walking up. So the wayfinding should be developed and submitted, sooner rather than later. That's something I think that should be ongoing. The whole, when we say initial opening period, again, something that's very, is that 1 day, is that 2 days, is that 3 weeks? I mean, I don't know what that means. And then we're gonna go, so I mean, I think it should be more of an opening period strategy, not necessarily opening day. And that the police details and the parking attendants are something that are going to be eliminated based on probably you having something to say about it and the town saying it's okay or it's not okay. The wayfinding, though, has to be forever. I mean, that just makes sense. I don't know why you would put up signs for a few weeks and then take them down. Because I would think you would continue to gain customers.
No, that's perfectly logical. I think,
Yeah, I mean-
I think it might have been based on some sort of signage code or restrictions on signage in the municipal regs.
Yeah, I'm sure we have restrictions on signage, but I mean, I think,
Yeah,
I think it's important.
maybe there's an exemption.
If you have to if you had to come even in front of us for some type of minimal relief, again, I think it's important, Member Ferris had pointed out in looking at the plan, I mean, you have a very narrow sort of curb opening there. You want people to see it and take a right. Don't go past it, turn around, come back,
our goals are
enter here,
aligned, yeah.
logo, little sign, whatever it might be. It doesn't need to be huge, but it needs to be clear. It needs to have, clear lettering and some type of maybe even minimal lighting or something like that, and we don't need something massive, but something tasteful that gets people to where they need to be. Those are my comments on A. I'd like to hear from the other board members on A and what they think is either good about it or what should be revised, if they have anything else beyond
I
what.
agree with everything you just said.
I agree as well.
Okay. Member Donato, does that take care of your concerns? Okay. The second one,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to speak to the wayfinding, this was a temporary wayfinding program. There's also a condition about wayfinding under condition 7 from the previous, so that's carried over from previously. The wayfinding signage shall be provided and is subject to review as part of the sign application for the project. And so that was identified, and it was specifically for the Elm Street entrance. And there's a utility pole there, and I clearly remember talking about that conversation. And so that hasn't been done yet because they're not at that stage to be open.
so what's the difference between the signage in 7 and the signage in 20A?
This was quoted from their traffic study, so I incorporated the wayfinding in 20A because it's so I assume it's part of their opening, so they may have more detailed additional temporary signage in order to identify it so that people aren't parking on the street.
So
or
what would the
sitting-
permanent signs be then?
It's
What's the difference between the permanent wayfinding and the temporary wayfinding?
permanent wayfinding would
we-
meet the signage requirements of the ordinance. And this
We
temporary.
want as much as we can get, which is, if we're up to us, we'd have a sign on the right that's pointing to the left, a sign on the left pointing to the right, a big arrow on the pavement. But the problem is that the code only allows for so much. We would love to come to you for an exemption or a variance or whatever it takes.
Yeah.
The concern is for certain, for Counselor Canellis, for example, she would prefer that there was not a square inch of signage and that she could pretend it doesn't exist. So there is the other.
Respectfully, I don't disagree with, respectfully, I disagree with that.
As do I. Our goals are aligned here. I think
I'm
the
not trying to
language
get
is-
you advertising, I'm trying to get people in there so they know where to turn. People do that all the time, they drive past a curb cut, they're turning around, they're maneuvering, they're doing a three-point turn, or they're pulling into Target or something like that. So,
And
I still don't understand are you saying that there'll be even more wayfinding when you first open? How much more do you need besides?
Madam Chair and Board, I think, a typical just general wayfinding signing, maybe one or two signs out front saying, the store and parking in the rear, once people know where it is. Obviously, in the beginning, with having, potentially more traffic, having to have a parking attendant, certainly we feel there would be some more signage helping direct people and provide information at the beginning. So I think that is the difference where if we're expecting, and the board is expressing concern that there's going to be more traffic at the beginning, and having a tenant out there full-time at the beginning, that there may need some additional signage to help guide people to the location where to park once the site is known and that relief isn't required. It would be much more of a simple signage, like any property that is just kind of an arrow, store here, park here.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, obviously, with more traffic, there's going to be needed possibly some more signage.
It could be one of those lighted sandwich boards that says, what you're talking about, we don't want to check, no right turn without appointment, right? So we could have that message up there, or we could have a green light that says space is available, red light, no space available. I think there's no cookie cutter solution. It's having some ability to come up with different ideas based on the challenges we face.
Okay.
There's also staff. Staff will serve as wayfinders for that period of time. People will be out there bringing.
But I think it's important to have wayfinding all the time.
Yes.
Is I guess what I'm saying.
We agree with that. We will take as much as we can get, so.
And I think something coming up with a good package from the beginning might eliminate the need for, sometimes too many signs isn't good either. Sandwich boards everywhere, people don't know where they're going, green lights, red lights, that sounds a little excessive. But I would just want to make sure that it's clear that there's some distinctions here, and that the expectation is that you're going to do whatever you need to do, and this town tells you to do, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, so. And then the second component says, when the adult use component of the business opens, there shall be a, quote, grand opening plan submitted and approved by the town. The plan shall include limitations for the first week of operation by instituting a reservation program. If it is shown that the parking and traffic management is not an issue, the regular operations can be implemented after that time. So again, going back to this and my concerns is this is very open to interpretation, this condition here. And we're saying, we want you to have limitations and we want you to have appointments. And if that traffic works, you can do away with what made it work. That's essentially what this condition says, if you break it down. So this condition, at least in my opinion, should say you're going to have a reservation program and you're going to continue that reservation program until you come back to the town and tell us that you don't need it anymore and why. And that's how that can be under a review period, but it's going to be more than a week. And again, I just think that how can we sit here and say everything works great with the reservations, that's why it works, get rid of the reservations? Isn't that the control that's making it work?
Our plan all along was to have close consultation with the chief and with the planning department. But there's only so many customers to go around, and at some point, the numbers will bear. As I said, today, we could figure out in 2019 how many customers bought and how many stores were open. So we'll be able to show what the predictions are and what the numbers are. If we are always going to be a reservation program, there will be a stigma attached to this particular location. Now, for some, it's going to be really convenient. They go on their phones, they come in and they do it. But there's other people who are going to be like, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to go to Boston, or I'm just going to go to Alston, or I'm just going to go to Newton. Well, Newton is in a reservation, but I'll go to Cambridge.
I think it's just the
locations.
Washington Street one, the other ones aren't. And that's another question for you, is that
Well,
the other two
well,
that
it
are-
remains
I
to be
mean,
seen.
you know, we could have 15 of these open up right over the town lines, Waltham, Alston, Newton, Belmont. I mean, we can't control that, and frankly, I don't care what they do in those towns. I only care about here.
Yeah.
And if this board feels as though what's gonna keep this thing smooth and not looking like nada is reservations, that's within our purview.
Of course.
And I think that these conditions are just like, after the first week, you know, everything's kind of orientated to this original period, and we don't know what that period is going to be, you know? Again, hopefully it's forever, and you're busy in a controlled manner, within your means of the site, within your parking spaces. You have other tenants there. I just think that B needs to be, you will operate by reservation, unless you come back and tell us why you don't need to do that anymore.
And that's reasonable. I guess we want to make sure is that there's a mechanism in place to, like you said, to make sure it's not non-falsifiable, if you will, you know, where, like you said, you know, if we come to you and say, we're ready to go non-reservation, you say, well, how do you know? It's the reservations that are working. That kind of that kind of prevents us from ever going non-reservation, because someone could always make the argument that you're not ready.
We'll have the ability to put it back.
And I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if the board wants to do this or not, but just an idea is that we include, at least in general terms, the standard for what would make it so you don't need to have reservations anymore. And for me, I think the standard is you're going to manage the property at all times so that there are no traffic issues, outdoor lines, or loitering of any customers, loitering of any customers, you know, outside of the store.
I don't want them there either.
There may be other criteria that we want to include, but I think that's what we would probably be looking at such time as you came in and wanted to lift
Yeah,
the
that's
reservation
perfectly
program.
reasonable.
And I think what we'd also be looking at, if the reservation program was in place, worked, was lifted, and then those issues reemerged, we would, I think, always want to preserve our ability to have the reservation program get snapped back into place.
I would just request that it's out of the hands of the board, with all due respect. It's not that, just because it is a much bigger hurdle to come here, and it's into the hands of whatever professional staff you deem appropriate. I just think there's a huge difference with having us come back and unwind a special permit or a zoning condition versus working with whoever you want in the city. There is a process to get here. We did not just show up
I know, but
tonight.
to get this, you need us. You
Well,
need this board.
Correct. Oh, correct. I mean, I didn't, I'm just, with all due respect, I heard kind of a Penelope of kind of comments here that you want to have that stronger than what it's here, and that there might be some trust for the planning board and the police department to make that determination as opposed to the board. I mean, I think there might be a split here. I just wanted to respectfully request that you know where we are on that side of the split, that we'd like it to be managed by staff for no other reason than it does take a good long time to get to this board. You have to go through a pretty long process to get here, and then there is always the risk of people choosing to shut us down if we come back here, and having the room filled and all those things. And so just kind of just a professional look at whether or not we're meeting the criteria that Board Member Heap just said, for example, can be done in a professional manner, can be done by an engineer, can be done by someone who actually went, and studied and can come, So I think those things are very, as opposed to, pressure coming from the public, et cetera, to just say, you know what, this is working, let's not break something that's working. Because I think there'd be a lot of pressure on this board to keep things in place, and there would be a great reluctance on the board to remove the safeguards that it has so carefully built. And I can only say that because I've been in your shoes before, not on a zoning board, but on a city council board. Very hard to remove things once you put it in place.
Is there a possible hybrid of, 2 weeks of, we start with this appointment only, and then we go away from it so that we can actually have data of what happens when the appointment only is not there, with the ability with the police chief and planning to say, you know what, these 3 hours aren't working, you guys have to go back to it. Or that yesterday didn't work, you guys, and then, day 15, okay, today worked, you can do tomorrow without the planning to have, a month-long transition process. Because you're right, we won't know if it's the appointment only that's keeping us safe, or our regular conditions where it's safe to take appointment only off.
I have a question, this whole appointment thing, or how this works, is it like when you sign up for like a yoga class and there's like 15 spots, and then after 15 spots, like, let's say I went on and I wanted to make a
Yeah,
reservation?
not too dissimilar, yeah.
Does it like shut you off? Like, what happens? It says there's no appointments today, is that what happens?
Yeah, it would effectively it would be a slot system, just like a yoga studio, exactly. Like, do you want the 5:15 or do you want the 4:30?
So, and then do you have a mechanism to know that there was like 100 other people that wanted appointments that day, or they didn't?
That technology exists. I'm not quite that tech savvy, but the app, what app would we use? Do you know what it'd be called? Sure, it's not through Full Hub, it's touchy, okay. It exists, it's essentially to find out if people are requesting appointments but getting shut out. Yes, that definitely exists.
It's my understanding that people are walking up to Newton and saying, do you have appointments open? And they go, yeah, okay, I'll take an appointment. And walking right in without pre-booking ahead of time too.
Yeah.
So if there's slots open, you can book right then and there.
But you'll never know the person that doesn't pick up the app because they say, why bother? I'm just going to go to this one because I know
Yeah,
there's open.
I'm just trying to understand how the whole, I mean, because if I was a business owner and I was on a reservation program and I knew there was 100 other people that wanted to come that day, I'd be right back here in front of this board saying, everything's working great, we're gonna get rid of it, because there's another 100 customers that you couldn't capture that day because so it's, again, that fine line between being successful and that maxing it just to the point that it doesn't tip over, but once it tips, it's really hard to recon that back, and I'm leery about it just being too intense there, and it just giving a perception of, oh, look what the zoning, it's just those, like I said, once it's there, it's too late. So how do we even prevent it from getting to that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfectly valid question, and hopefully you can understand our position, which is that we worry about the other side, is once you have something that's working very smoothly, for the business owner, we're saying, well, we're not getting nearly as much business as we would like, we're overpaying these parking attendants during dead hours, but you have a bunch of constituents that don't like marijuana to begin with and would prefer not to be in town saying.
There's nobody here tonight.
No, tonight's not a good example, but we've been through this enough times to know
Sorry, Dennis.
that it can happen, and the tone
You're here when we're not
the
here.
tone of a room can change very quickly, and we're all human, and we're all, we all,
Yeah, we've had that tone here
subconscious
before,
sort of-
sir, and respectfully, I think this board does a very good job at sort of listening to the facts
Yeah.
and forming their own opinions.
So the fact, but, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the fact will be, it will be going smoothly with appointments. So how are you going to determine to say, it's going really smoothly right now, but we're still ready to take this away?
Madam Chair.
What are the mechanisms in place? The council member, he, threw out a few, but we just want to make sure that it's not, that there is a clear path to freedom, if you will,
Yeah.
lack of a better
Yeah.
term, that's based on hard data, and that we won't come back here a few months after opening and say, everything's going smoothly, this is great, and we don't want to change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they say, and we'll say, okay, I guess we're not going to do the business we thought we would.
Did you have a comment,
I-
Ferris?
I was going to say, having a, staff level review is that it allows a level of nimbleness. Like, if we say, and that's what the intent of this was, is if the reservation system is lifted and there's an issue, you immediately shut it down. There's not in the other direction. So, and I think that's what they've been describing, is that, because there would be a staff back and forth, they can test something for a part of a day. And they can coordinate that with the police department and with our department. And so I think that with clear criteria from the board, that would help us determine if something is a yes or a no to, lifting the reservation system.
That's part of why I suggested including, and I might not have made this clear, but I think what I'd suggest is that we include a separate condition that doesn't exist in the draft right now, that says, as a condition, there will be no lines There will be no people, customers of the business loitering out front, and there will be no traffic issues. You probably got to refine that a little bit, but by that I mean, traffic,
Like
too
measures.
many cars
Yeah,
on
parking
site,
lot.
or any cars
There will be
backing up
no-
onto Elm Street.
The parking lot will not be full.
Right. Well, the parking lot can be full, but there can't be cars like,
Yeah. More than-
backed up.
Really not negatively impacted by them.
So, I think that sounds perfect. So if all of those things appear as a separate condition in the permit, I mean, they will always need to adhere to those, or else they're going to be in violation of the permit, whether they're operating under reservations or not. And those conditions would, I think, give us always give us a mechanism to say, the easiest way to remedy this is just go back to reservations.
Right.
Once they're lifted. So I don't know, I think that might be one way of addressing the concern.
I like that suggestion a lot. Did you want to read what you drafted, or was that kind of just your notes?
That was, I would just, well, include, what I'd suggest is including as a separate condition that the business shall be managed at all times so that there will be no outdoor lines, loitering of customers out in front of the business, and no traffic issues, which I think you probably,
Negatively impacted the community. surrounding.
and Elm Street, I would say Elm Street and the surrounding community. And with that condition in place, I would be comfortable, I think, saying in B, when the adult use component of the business opens, there shall be a grand opening plan submitted and approved by the town. The business shall operate exclusively under a reservation program until such time as it is shown to the satisfaction of the chief of police or staff, I don't have an opinion there, that the reservation program is no longer necessary, after which point it can be re-implemented at any time, upon a determination by the chief of police or staff that it's needed again to, produce compliance with the other condition,
yeah.
which is, no lines, no loitering, and no traffic backups.
not be necessary, be
I think that works for me. And then, again, just as the board and Mike as the enforcement officer, I mean, they can be called in here at any point to show cause and/or to, demonstrate that there's compliance. I really like your suggestions. I hope you were taking notes, Gideon.
I was listening, but I was.
Well, we can play
I
it
was-
back.
He looked like he was reading, so.
And then I want you to come back and tell us what's going on anyway. I mean, aside from this, this could be part of that, but I want you to come back and, say 6 months after the medical opens and then 6 months after the recreation. It could just be you, Aiden, or, your attorney, and just kind of give us an update of, that's how we, maybe we're being, maybe we're going a little too far, maybe we're not going far enough. You come in here and say, oh, the medical's off the charts, we're doing great, we had to go on a reservation, so I think that dialogue and that communication is probably the most important part of us understanding your business and you understanding the expectations of the town and sort of what's gonna be tolerated. What one community tolerates might be different, what the police chief thinks is okay might be different, and just to be able to have, dialogue and discussion around that, and for us to get an understanding of how you're operating there and hopefully hearing that it's successful without any kind of implications to the neighborhood.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think that's what everybody's kind of hoping for. And this is a learning process for us too. And again, I'm just looking at observations and, doing a little research and just see two completely different facilities and what I like about one and what I don't like about another one. Again, just from, driving by and just hoping that this one here is, again, successful without any kind of implications. I don't know if the other members have any other follow-up, but I thank you very much, Member Heap, for kind of putting together some sort of measures that correlate to when we would need to reactivate that plan. as you had mentioned, maybe it's on, everything looks good. Okay, Chief Lon, we're gonna test it for a week, see how it goes, then this, so at least we know you're testing it, there's communication there, and that people can be aware of, sort of, they might be like, oh, well, they're on a reservation thing, the place was really packed. Well, no, actually, they weren't. They shut it off to see how it would work or something like that. Or again, it might be during the week, you don't need it, on the weekends you do. And again, I don't think anyone's really gonna know until you sort of, get up and running and figure out, is this gonna be popular, or are people gonna just blow you off and go wait in line for 2 hours on Route 9? I don't know.
I had one question. So if we're saying there can't be any line outside, would that be like one person waiting? Would it be 10 people waiting? Because you have to go in and have your ID checked, so there'll inevitably be some stalling anyways, right? I
There'll be
mean,
a little bit of backup. I mean,
I just want to be careful that we're not saying like 0 lines and then you have 3 people waiting.
it was very, I'm embarrassed I don't have the number of what the fire marshal, for the square footage of our actual, well, it's close to 90 for the whole facility,
Right.
but for our actual waiting area, which is, small by some standards, big by others, it's bigger than a kind of check-in area, coat room of a restaurant, but it's, it's probably 130 square feet or so.
Is the whole security thing what creates the line?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's people are being, whatever, they're
Yeah, imagine-
scanning their retinas or whatever you're doing?
Imagine if you had to check an ID outside of Target to get in, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Best Buy, I mean, it's,
Okay.
or any liquor store for that matter, I mean.
And customers don't
we would
take,
much-
I mean, you're in and out in like 5 minutes maybe,
Yeah.
so it's a quick turnaround. And,
Okay.
I mean, I agree,
It's
I've
kind of
seen
for us,
them
it's
in
like damned
different
if you do, and
places,
then
and there's
we
really
would
no
obviously
line.
prefer to just check an ID at the register, like, like other
Yeah.
industries, and.
Then you just don't want a bunch of people like hanging in there, they can't buy, right? If you're
No,
not buying,
but-
get out, right?
Yeah.
We also, we committed to the town that if you get caught by the police in the parking lot across the street, we're gonna trespass you from the property. So if you were a bad client, you
Yep.
wanna check our database to make sure you're not.
Okay, okay. So do you think we need to clarify line?
I just want to make sure that it's not so strict that
It might be
any-
helpful, and I appreciate that.
Because I
that-
imagine that if there are folks that are, just don't like the idea of marijuana, they see this thing and they see, 3 people
Or, I mean,
outside or something.
sorry to cut you off, the waiting area is also visible to the public. It's just, it's glass and you can see in. So I would worry that if it's the summertime and even there's just one person who's getting their ID checked and 2 other people show up and they say, oh, someone's getting their ID checked, let's, and they hang out for a minute or 2 while they wait for the next person to go through.
Yeah.
And that happens to be the minute
Or
that.
the winter, where
that-
it's cold.
Well, in the winter, they'd probably be more incentivized to go inside, but.
Or wait in the car if there's.
Or
one,
wait in the car, yeah,
so
exactly.
just making sure.
Yeah, it's like anything else. My concern is just making sure that this criteria is very clearly spelled out and that we kind of remove
Double doors, you mean?
any sort of element of
It's-
subjectivity as best possible.
There's
The excessive 2 lines impacting.
one set of doors and then,
management of the site.
yeah, it's pretty big. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So is your waiting area this thing you call reception?
Yeah.
And where do so those people they're in the front door, but their ID hasn't been checked yet? Is that what that is? It's like a holding pool?
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll check their ID here, and then they'll get buzzed in to go into there, so it's a fairly large area. I mean, that's a 3-foot door.
Okay.
There could be like 10 people standing there.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got, if that whole thing's full and you're spilling out the door, you got a problem.
But
That area is like,
The ID's checked at the door before you go in. And so then you go in, I actually got to see the tag. So then you go in and that's where the people stand around and wait for purchasing, which, there's so many.
No, but there's,
I'm looking, Gideon, I'm looking at the floor plan, and my question was, they have the ramp, they come up, there's an entry
We talked about it
vestibule
at one point.
that is open to the reception area, correct?
Yes,
The ability to close that door and make that access control if you want to, but the intent would be, now that we've gone to recreational instead of medical, to have people open that door without us having to force people.
Right. So yeah,
I would say
I mean, that area looks pretty big.
15 to 20 people.
yeah, I was guessing there's room for like 10 people in there, probably, yeah.
We're checking IDs and we're buzzing one person at a time. Now, if we've got 12 point of sale. What we got, six point of sale?
I think it's 7, yeah.
4, 5,
We
6,
still have the
7.
ability to queue people and have people waiting inside in chairs and kind of waiting to be called up.
Kind of like the registry.
We don't want to be compared.
Better be faster than them. Yeah, so again, just looking at the size of the reception area, you know, and the vestibule itself looks pretty big. You know,
What about the line spills into the actual parking lot?
I mean, I don't know that this is, I don't want to minimize the concern, but I think the concern from the applicant's perspective is that you got one person standing out in front getting his ID checked, which somehow triggers zoning enforcement. And I don't think that's likely.
Right.
I think if the phone call comes in from angry neighbor that says, you know, there was a guy checking his ID and he's standing there for 10 seconds, that's not going to likely to trigger zoning enforcement from the town. I don't think. Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But
Yeah, we may get a phone call of, I saw 2 people outside the line, and the condition specifically says no line, why aren't you enforcing on these people? You know, technically, could I say, yeah, they're in violation? Sure. Might I say, well, we'll drive by a few times during the week, we'll keep an eye on it, see if that's a consistent thing? And, you know, is more likely what would happen, I mean, knowing the concern, we drive around the town all the time during the day, looking for violations, building without permits. We're going to drive by the site, we're going to know, also drive around if there's an issue, keeping an eye on the property.
I would, for my part, I would think if we say no lines, that protects the interest
Yeah.
that we're looking to protect and doesn't really put the applicant in
Yeah.
a real jeopardy of excessive.
And
or-
what that does is it puts the onus on you to man it, say, hey, we need 2 people checking IDs here, so we gotta move these people in. You know, if the whole reception, if you can't move anybody into the sales floor and the whole reception area is full and people, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's to the point where you can't move people quick
Yeah,
enough.
that's fair. That's perfectly reasonable. Yeah.
That's when.
That's when we go back to reservation.
Exactly. So it's, when you can't move people in and out of there, get them in and out. Now, mind you, again, they're gonna be coming out this door too, so you're gonna wanna keep, if you can't handle that, then that's exactly what we're talking about. You're spilling outside, you can't move people quick enough. Perfect point. You're gonna have to go back to reservations. Yeah.
Perfectly reasonable. You know, as long, you know, especially if there's any element of subjectivity, you know, knowing that we have you know, reasonable actors on the other side who are the ones actually supervising and passing those recommendations forward is reassuring. We would hate to get bounced on a technicality, so to speak, you know, so that's good.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted
Yes,
to add
please.
on the dialogue that you mentioned about checking in 6 months. Right now, in condition 14, we've got annual review. So we do have something in there, but we don't carve out the medical versus the adult use.
Yeah, can we amend that one to have the 2, that way we can see kind of what's going on with the medical, and then when they add the recreation, we'll be able to have some kind of basis.
6 months, max.
So 6 months out from, you said you're gonna open up the medical soon, right? Hopefully?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping to be on the agenda for the final
Okay.
next month.
So they'll get that up and running, that'll kind of be like your little, is that more busy than recreation? I have no idea. No? The recreation's more busy?
Yes.
Okay.
So are you suggesting that this now would be it'd be a 6-month review? Would it be an ongoing? The way this one was originally written was that annually they'd be providing some kind of a,
Let's do 6 months, and then we'll leave it as needed. We might say, come back in a year, we might say, everything's great, we might say, you know, you need 15 security guards, I don't know what we're gonna say.
Yeah, we're
And I don't think you do, and I just wanna leave it open it enough so that you're comfortable that
We're not
you're,
opposed
you
to that,
know,
though.
when you leave here, you're like, oh my God, I'm so wrapped up, and, you know, you're freaking out. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to
right, I just
help
wanted to-
you
yeah.
be successful so that you're welcomed. I don't know how else to frame it.
Right, so it'll be
Thank you, Member
subject to-
Donato, for pointing that out. I didn't have a chance to go back and then sort of doctoring up 20 with the stuff that Member Heap had suggested, the additional language, and then modifying.
Suggested and just
B.
Make sure that it's clear that they're tied together, okay.
Yes.
I do, yes, thanks. So for B, we are going to modify in some way the phrase first week.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then my other question for the board is, as one of the applicants had kind of referenced, should we identify at the transition point where it transitions from appointment to non-appointment time period, let's say 1 week or 2 weeks, where the applicant actually documents the usage in comparison to the appointment usage, to give some data to whoever's making the decision?
My recommendation is that, and I hope you're listening to Member Ferris here, is that you keep all of that document. You'll have your sales anyways. You'll know how many people are in and out of there.
Yeah,
because
it's all required by the
Those are
state.
things that you're gonna want to substantiate, if there becomes an issue and we're totally off base, you can say, look, when I was on reservations, I had 6 guys an hour. I'm off reservations and I only have 7. So we can be able to, I think, keeping that data, or keeping as much data you can on, which you'll have the times, what they bought, what they spent.
And we're required to by the state.
Yeah.
I think that'll be helpful, I think,
Yeah.
for everybody, just to understand that Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, you're super busy, and Monday, Tuesday, you're not. Just so that if there is some need to modify any type of timing, it could be based on reality versus somebody sitting behind a table saying you should do this. Thanks.
Yeah, that type of real data is always helpful to boards when trying to,
Bring it on our 6-month review.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. And this is sort of our first, it actually would have been cool if you were already up and running. It's unfortunate that you're not.
Yeah, we would.
Because then you'd kind of be able to come and say, hey, we've been up
Agree.
and running for a year, everything's awesome, Not that you're not gonna say that in 6 months, but we haven't really had the opportunity to kind of, in my head, I'm like, this guy's gonna be open and running, and by the time he wants to do recreation, no one's gonna care.
We thought so too.
So, it's just, I appreciate you understanding sort of our concerns and wanting to make sure that this is successful for you and really for the community as well. A lot of stuff going on down in East Watertown, a lot of different development, a lot of things coming online, and,
We're excited to be a part of it.
yeah, I think you're in a great location. Oh, yeah. Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions or comments? My clerk just reminded me I didn't reach out to the public. I apologize. I was very focused. I'm assuming you guys are all together? Okay. Do you have any questions or comments, sir? Okay. All right. Anything else from any of the board members? The applicant, anything else? You sure? He's not sure.
No, I'm advised by my lawyer.
Listen to these two senior guys here. They got a few cases on you, my friend. Okay, does the staff have any other questions about what we talked about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
We have the video.
okay, thank you. I appreciate it, and thank you very much, Member Heap, for kind of taking that over and getting us on the right track. Okay, so we were here this evening for a modification to a special permit 2007-03 that was originally for a medical marijuana dispensary. The applicant's here this evening. He has actually, did you exercise this in time? Did you get extensions to this decision?
We did get an extension, yeah.
Okay.
And they pulled a building, they got an extension over a year ago, and they pulled a building permit, and they have a
Oh,
CO.
okay,
and it's
okay,
sitting there
okay.
ready
All
to
right,
go.
start doing something in there.
Yeah. Good question. That's normally where someone would be, oh no.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. Just looking at the times
Yeah.
and the clocks. So noting that we have a staff recommendation for conditional approval. The planning board did meet on January 8th and discussed this as well, and submitted their staff report, which we discussed in detail this evening, especially the conditions at length, mainly around the provisional periods and reservations, and also the reviews and some other measures needed for the board to ensure that this site's going to operate seamlessly. So with that, Again, I'm not going to review the specific conditions. We did modify those extensively at the agreement of the applicant. And with that, is there any motions to move forward?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the requested special permit with the conditions that we have discussed.
There's been a motion made for approval of the amendment with the conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have one more item of business here on the agenda. This is 19 Coolidge Hill Road. Paul Ferreira is the manager of 19 Coolidge Hill LLC. This was an application for comprehensive permit for 113 residential units, and I will use this opportunity once again to express extreme gratitude to the planning staff for their extensive exercise in documenting that Watertown, Massachusetts has reached its general land area minimum and has secured 1.5% of their land area dedicated to affordable housing. I cannot, miss, again, this opportunity. I've said this publicly a few times, and I'm going to say it again. Deep gratitude to the staff for doing those calculations. It's not an easy task, and they took it on, and they performed it, and we prevailed. My understanding is we're the second community that has been certified recently under those provisions. And again, I want to thank the staff. Gideon, I know you worked really hard on that, and Mike, for your support as well. Huge undertaking and huge reward. You should be very, very, very proud. I'm going to embarrass you. You did an awesome job. And, anybody watching at home, start clapping, because this is a very difficult task. And we have achieved that safe harbor. So with that, is there a motion to accept the petitioner's request to withdraw their comprehensive permit application?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.